Part 1. The Ocean in a Drop. You are not just the drop in the ocean, but the entire ocean in each drop. This revelation shatters the fundamental illusion that keeps most people trapped in smallness. We spend decades trying to connect with something greater, not realizing we already contain it. Every emotion you feel is the universe experiencing itself through your nervous system. When you laugh, creation is celebrating through you. Consider your capacity to imagine things that do not exist yet. This power to envision new realities is the same force that imagined galaxies into being before they formed. Your creativity is not separate from cosmic creativity. It is cosmic creativity discovering what it can accomplish through human consciousness. Every breakthrough in art, science, or technology emerges from this universal intelligence, expressing through individual awareness. Even more profound is what this means for your problems and limitations. If you contain infinite potential, then every obstacle you face is actually infinite intelligence creating a puzzle for itself to solve. Your struggles are not evidence of separation from the divine. They are opportunities for divinity to experience transcendence through apparent limitation. This transforms suffering from meaningless pain into conscious participation in the universe awakening to its own nature. The practical impact changes everything about goal achievement. Instead of trying to become something more than you are, you learn to remove whatever obscures what you already contain. Success becomes less about adding to yourself and more about subtracting false beliefs about your limitations. You stop seeking fulfillment and start expressing the completeness that has always been your true nature. Part 2. Selling your cleverness. Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. Most people accumulate knowledge like armor, believing information will protect them from uncertainty. Rumi understood that intellectual cleverness actually blocks access to deeper wisdom. When your mind is full of answers, there is no space for revelations to enter. Bewilderment creates the fertile emptiness where genuine understanding can take root. Think about your most profound learning experiences. They probably happened when you encountered something that completely shattered your existing beliefs. In that moment of not knowing, your consciousness became receptive to possibilities that your clever mind had previously dismissed. Bewilderment is not confusion. It is the recognition that reality is far more mysterious and magnificent than your concepts can contain. This teaching reveals why experts often miss breakthrough discoveries. Their expertise becomes a prison that prevents them from seeing obvious solutions. Children and beginners frequently solve problems that stump professionals because they approach situations with fresh bewilderment rather than stale cleverness. Your willingness to not know opens doorways that knowing closes. Part 3. Dawn's secret messenger. The breeze at dawn has secrets to tell you. Don't go back to sleep. This verse reveals the optimal time for receiving guidance from your deepest intelligence. Dawn represents the liminal space between sleeping and waking consciousness, where insights flow most freely. Your rational mind has not yet activated its usual filtering mechanisms, allowing subtle wisdom to reach your awareness. Most people miss this daily opportunity by immediately checking their phones or rushing into activity. The breeze symbolizes the gentle way that truth approaches consciousness. Profound realizations rarely arrive through dramatic revelations. They whisper through quiet moments of receptivity. When you create space for stillness, especially during the transitional hours of dawn and dusk, solutions to your deepest questions often appear without effort. The universe is constantly offering guidance, but you must be awake enough to receive it. Going back to sleep means returning to unconscious patterns that keep you trapped in limited thinking. Every morning offers a fresh chance to live from expanded awareness rather than automatic reactions. The secrets the dawn breeze carries are not mysterious prophecies, but reminders of who you really are beneath all your conditioning. Part 4. Love's Strange Pull. Let yourself be silently drawn by the strange pull of what you really love. It will not lead you astray. Authentic desire functions as internal navigation that guides you toward your highest expression. The word strange is crucial here because genuine calling often feels foreign to your rational mind. What you really love may not make logical sense given your background, skills or circumstances. It pulls you toward experiences that serve your soul's evolution rather than your ego's agenda. Most people ignore this inner compass because they have been taught to make decisions based on external expectations. They choose careers, relationships and lifestyles that look good on paper, but feel dead inside. Rumi understood that your authentic desires are not random preferences, but cosmic intelligence, expressing through your individual consciousness. When you follow what genuinely calls to you, the universe rearranges itself to support that path. The silent nature of this guidance distinguishes it from ego desires that scream for attention. True calling feels like remembering something you always knew rather than wanting something you lack. It draws you forward through attraction rather than pushing you through fear or ambition. Trusting this strange pull requires faith that your deepest longings are aligned with universal purpose. Part 5. Removing Love's Barriers. Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. This teaching completely reverses how most people approach relationships and fulfillment. Instead of trying to get love from others or find love somewhere outside yourself, you focus on removing whatever blocks your natural capacity to give and receive love. Love is not something you acquire. It is something you already are that has become obscured by protective mechanisms. Every wall you have built to avoid pain also prevents joy from reaching you. The barriers against love include judgments about yourself and others, expectations about how relationships should work, and beliefs about your worthiness. Fear of vulnerability causes you to withhold your authentic self, which creates the very disconnection you are trying to avoid. When you systematically dismantle these defensive structures, love flows naturally because there is nothing left to obstruct it. You discover that love is not an emotion, but the fundamental fabric of consciousness itself. This approach transforms every relationship into spiritual practice. Instead of focusing on what others need to change, you examine what prevents you from loving freely in each moment. Every interaction becomes an opportunity to dissolve another barrier and express more of your true nature. The love you seek is revealed to be the love you are. Part 6. Empty of worrying. Be empty of worrying. Think of who created thought. Worry represents the mind's attempt to control future outcomes through mental rehearsal of problems. Most people believe that worrying demonstrates responsible concern, but it actually weakens your ability to respond effectively to challenges. When you worry, you are essentially practicing failure in your imagination, which programs your nervous system for anxiety rather than confidence. Emptying yourself of worry creates space for creative solutions to emerge spontaneously. The second part of this teaching points to the source of all mental activity. If you can think thoughts, then you must be something deeper than thought itself. The same intelligence that creates your ability to worry can create wisdom, peace, and clarity when you align with it properly. By identifying with the awareness that observes thoughts rather than the thoughts themselves, you gain access to unlimited problem-solving capacity. Practical application means catching yourself in worry patterns and redirecting attention to the present moment. Instead of mentally rehearsing imaginary catastrophes, you focus on what can be done right now with available resources. This shift from worry to presence activates your natural intelligence and often reveals obvious solutions that worry had made invisible. You learn to trust the same creative force that designed your brain to provide whatever insights are needed when they are needed. Part 7. Born with wings. You were born with wings. Why prefer to crawl through life? This metaphor reveals how most people settle for a fraction of their actual capabilities. The wings represent your unlimited potential for creativity, love, wisdom, and joy that exists within your consciousness right now. Crawling symbolizes the limited ways of thinking and behaving that keep you trapped in small versions of yourself. You choose crawling not because you lack wings, but because you have forgotten how to use them. Consider how birds learn to fly through practice rather than instruction. They do not need to develop wings, they need to discover how to trust the wings they already possess. Similarly, accessing your highest potentials requires experimenting with possibilities that feel uncertain or uncomfortable. Most people avoid this experimentation because they prefer the security of familiar limitations to the adventure of unknown capabilities. The tragedy is not that you face obstacles, but that you face them while forgetting you have wings. Every challenge becomes an opportunity to discover new aspects of your power when you approach it from expanded rather than contracted awareness. Flying means operating from your essential nature rather than your conditioned personality. It requires releasing attachment to ground-level perspectives and trusting your capacity to navigate higher dimensions of experience. Part 8. The Clean Lamp. The lamp burns bright when wick and oil are clean. This simple image contains precise instructions for maintaining clarity of consciousness. The lamp represents your awareness, the wick is your attention, and the oil symbolizes the life force that fuels your mental and emotional activity. When these elements are pure and properly maintained, your inner light shines without obstruction. Most people struggle with dim perception because they have never learned how to clean their internal equipment. Cleaning the wick means removing the accumulated residue of past experiences that clouds your ability to see situations clearly. Old resentments, unprocessed emotions, and limiting beliefs act like soot that dims your natural radiance. Regular practices like meditation, forgiveness, and honest self-reflection prevent this build-up and restore your original brightness. A clean wick allows present moment awareness to flow without interference from historical conditioning. Pure oil represents life force energy that has not been contaminated by stress, negativity, or unconscious living. When you maintain your physical health, emotional balance, and mental clarity, you provide high-quality fuel for consciousness to operate at optimal levels. The brightest lamp results from combining pure fuel with a clean delivery system. This creates the inner radiance that naturally illuminates whatever you focus your attention upon. Part 9. Vanish and Shine. Knock and he'll open the door, vanish and he'll make you shine like the sun. The progression from knocking to vanishing reveals two distinct stages of spiritual development. Knocking represents the early phase where you still believe in separation between yourself and the divine. You are seeking connection with something outside yourself, asking for permission to enter sacred territory. This stage involves prayer, seeking, and various practices designed to earn spiritual rewards. Vanishing represents the advanced realization that there was never any separation to overcome. When the sense of individual self dissolves, what remains is the pure consciousness that was always present. You stop trying to become enlightened and recognize that enlightenment is your natural state obscured by the illusion of being a separate person. The divine does not reward your vanishing. It reveals itself as what you have always been beneath your temporary identity. Shining like the sun happens automatically when there is no longer a false self to block the light. Your radiance doesn't come from developing special qualities, but from removing everything that is not essential. Just as the sun does not try to shine, but simply expresses its nature, your inner light emerges effortlessly when psychological obstacles dissolve. This luminosity serves others not through doing, but through being an example of what becomes possible when someone stops pretending to be small. Part 10. Yesterday clever, today wise. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. This evolution from cleverness to wisdom represents one of the most important shifts in human development. Cleverness operates from the assumption that problems exist outside yourself and can be fixed through external manipulation. It sees the world as separate from consciousness and tries to impose solutions through force, argument, or control. Wisdom recognizes that your experience of reality is generated by your internal state and changes naturally when consciousness transforms. The desire to change the world often stems from frustration with your own inner conflicts projected onto external circumstances. When you feel powerless, angry, or dissatisfied, it seems easier to blame outside conditions than to examine your relationship with experience itself. Wisdom reveals that the world you perceive is a reflection of your level of consciousness, so changing yourself automatically changes your world. This is not passive resignation, but the most powerful form of action available to human beings. Self-transformation ripples outward in ways that direct attempts to fix others never can. When you embody peace, you naturally inspire peace in those around you without trying to convince anyone of anything. Your presence becomes a field of possibility that allows others to access their own wisdom and healing. Changing yourself is actually the most effective way to serve the transformation of humanity. Part 11. Silence as God's language. Silence is the language of God, all else is poor translation. This teaching reveals why verbal descriptions of spiritual truth always fall short of direct experience. Words are symbols that point to reality but cannot contain it, like a menu describing food without providing nourishment. The deepest truths can only be communicated through silence because they exist beyond the realm where language operates. When you learn to listen to silence, you access information that is impossible to convey through speech or writing. Most people fear silence because it confronts them with the emptiness beneath their constant mental chatter. They fill every moment with noise, activity, or distraction to avoid encountering the vastness of their essential nature. Learning to rest in silence without discomfort reveals dimensions of awareness that remain invisible when consciousness is occupied with verbal thinking. This is where genuine wisdom originates before it gets translated into inadequate words. Practical application means creating regular periods of complete stillness where you listen to what cannot be heard with your ears. In this receptive space, solutions to complex problems often appear without logical analysis. Relationships improve when you communicate from the silence that underlies words rather than just exchanging concepts. Your actions become more effective when they arise from wordless understanding rather than mental planning. Part 12, Nothing Lost Returns. Don't grieve. Anything you lose comes round in another form. This profound teaching reframes loss as transformation rather than permanent deprivation. In a universe where energy can neither be created nor destroyed, nothing actually disappears but only changes form. The love you shared with someone who died does not vanish. It becomes available in new ways that may be unrecognizable to your grief. What appears to be ending is actually the universe rearranging itself to provide what you need in different packaging. Grief often stems from attachment to specific forms rather than recognition of underlying essence. When you lose a job, relationship, or capability, the essential gifts those experiences provided seek new vehicles for expression. The security, connection, or sense of purpose you thought came from external sources reveals itself as internal qualities that can manifest through unlimited possibilities. Loss forces you to discover resources you did not know you possessed. This perspective transforms how you relate to change and uncertainty. Instead of clinging to current circumstances out of fear that losing them means losing everything, you begin trusting the process of continuous transformation. You learn to appreciate what you have while remaining open to the new forms that life wants to offer. Grief becomes a temporary adjustment period rather than permanent suffering, because you know that love and value are indestructible even when their expressions change. Part 13, River Moving in You. When you do things from your soul, you feel a river moving in you, a joy. This teaching provides a reliable indicator for distinguishing soul calling from ego-driven activity. Actions aligned with your authentic nature create a sense of effortless flow, as if you are being carried by a current rather than swimming against it. The river represents life force energy that moves through you when there is no resistance between your personality and your essence. Joy becomes the natural byproduct of expressing your true nature rather than trying to become someone you are not. Most people exhaust themselves pursuing goals that look impressive, but feel empty because they require constant effort without generating internal satisfaction. When you operate from your soul, work becomes play and challenge becomes adventure. You still encounter obstacles, but you meet them with creativity and enthusiasm rather than struggle and resentment. The river carries you through difficulties with grace because you are aligned with the current of your deepest purpose. Learning to recognize this inner river requires paying attention to how different activities affect your energy and mood. Some pursuits drain you even when they succeed, while others energize you even when they fail. The river of joy flows strongest when you're expressing unique gifts in service of something larger than personal gain. Following this feeling leads you toward your most fulfilling contribution to the world. Part 14, Universe in Motion. Stop acting so small. You are the universe in ecstatic motion. Acting small means operating from limited beliefs about what you are capable of creating, experiencing, or becoming. Most people underestimate their potential because they identify with their current circumstances rather than their infinite essence. They play safe, avoid risks, and settle for mediocrity to protect an identity that does not even reflect their true nature. This self-imposed smallness is a form of cosmic amnesia where the universe forgets its own magnificence. Ecstatic motion suggests that existence itself is a celebration of pure creative joy. You are not a mistake or accident struggling to survive in an indifferent cosmos, but the universe experiencing the thrill of its own expansion through your consciousness. Every moment offers unlimited possibilities for adventure, discovery and expression because you are infinite creativity, exploring what it can accomplish through human form. Your dreams and aspirations are not separate from you. They are the universe, dreaming itself into new realities. Embracing this identity transforms how you approach every aspect of life. Instead of asking whether you are good enough for your goals, you ask whether your goals are big enough for who you really are. Fear becomes excitement about discovering unknown capabilities. Failure becomes feedback from the universe refining its expression through your experience. You start living as the magnificent force you have always been rather than the small story you thought you were. Part 15. Ask all from yourself. Everything in the universe is within you. Ask all from yourself. This radical teaching challenges the fundamental assumption that fulfillment comes from external sources. Most people spend their lives seeking love, validation, security, and happiness from other people, achievements, or possessions. Rumi understood that every quality you admire in others already exists within your own consciousness, waiting to be activated. Instead of trying to get what you need from the world, you learn to access infinite resources that are always available internally. Asking all from yourself does not mean becoming isolated or self-sufficient in an ego-driven way. It means recognizing that your capacity for peace, joy, creativity and wisdom is unlimited when you stop looking outside yourself for what you already contain. Other people and experiences serve as mirrors that help you discover your own hidden potentials rather than sources of what you lack. Relationships become opportunities for mutual recognition rather than desperate attempts to fill internal voids. This shift eliminates the victim mentality that keeps people trapped in blame and resentment. When you know that everything you need is accessible within your own consciousness, you stop waiting for external circumstances to change before you can be happy. You become the source of what you seek, rather than a beggar hoping others will provide it. This does not eliminate desire for connection and sharing, but it transforms neediness into generosity. Part 16. Candle in your heart. There is a candle in your heart ready to be kindled. There is a void in your soul ready to be filled. The candle represents your innate capacity for illumination that requires only the right conditions to ignite spontaneously. Most people believe they need to develop spiritual qualities through years of practice and purification. Rumi reveals that enlightenment is not something you achieve, but something you uncover by removing what obscures your natural radiance. The light is already present, waiting for you to provide the spark of sincere intention and sustained attention. The void in your soul is not a deficiency, but a sacred emptiness designed to receive divine presence. Many people try to fill this space with achievements, relationships, substances, or experiences that provide temporary satisfaction but cannot address the deeper longing. The void exists specifically to create capacity for infinite love and wisdom to flow through your human experience. When you stop trying to fill it with finite things, it becomes a channel for unlimited fulfillment. Understanding this paradox transforms spiritual seeking from effortful striving to receptive allowing. You kindle the candle not by adding something foreign, but by removing the dampness of doubt and the darkness of distraction. You fill the void not by grasping, but by surrendering to what wants to emerge through your openness. Both the light and the fullness are already yours, waiting for you to create conditions that allow them to manifest naturally. Part 17. The Middle Path. Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. The middle path is the way to wisdom. The middle path does not mean compromise or avoiding extremes through timid moderation. It represents the dynamic balance between opposing forces that create space for transcendent solutions to emerge. When you are caught between conflicting desires, beliefs, or options, wisdom often appears in the creative tension, rather than in choosing one side over the other. This requires developing comfort with paradox and uncertainty, rather than rushing to resolve every dilemma. Most people swing between extremes of effort and surrender, control and chaos, attachment and aversion. The middle path involves learning to hold both poles simultaneously without getting trapped in either position. You become like a tree that remains rooted while its branches move freely in the wind, stable yet flexible enough to adapt to changing conditions. This balance allows you to respond appropriately to each situation rather than reacting from rigid patterns. Practical application means catching yourself when you fall into either excessive doing or passive waiting. Instead of trying harder or giving up completely, you look for the third option that transcends both approaches. This might mean taking inspired action while remaining detached from outcomes, or accepting what cannot be changed while continuing to influence what you can. The middle path is not a position, but a way of moving through life that honors both human effort and divine grace. Part 18. Work without slavery. Work, but not in the way of slave. Be in the world, but not of the world. This teaching distinguishes between conscious engagement and unconscious compulsion in all your activities. Slave work comes from fear, desperation, or unconscious programming that drives you to pursue external validation without regard for your internal well-being. Free work emerges from authentic choice and serves both your individual growth and collective benefit. The same activity can be either slavery or freedom, depending on the consciousness you bring to it. Being in the world but not of the world means participating fully in human experience while maintaining connection to your eternal essence. You engage with relationships, career and creative projects without deriving your identity or security from their outcomes. This creates freedom to take risks, experiment with possibilities, and serve others without the anxiety that comes from needing specific results to feel worthy or safe. You play your human role completely while remembering it is ultimately a temporary game. The practical impact transforms work from burden into expression. Instead of trading your life energy for money out of survival fear, you look for ways to contribute your unique gifts while meeting your practical needs. You maintain inner freedom regardless of external circumstances by anchoring your sense of worth in something deeper than worldly success or failure. This allows you to be both deeply engaged and perfectly detached, caring passionately while holding everything lightly. Part 19. Gamble everything for love. Gamble everything for love if you are a true human being. If not, leave this gathering. This fierce invitation challenges you to risk everything false for the sake of what is eternally true. Gambling everything for love does not mean making reckless emotional decisions or abandoning practical responsibilities. It means prioritizing the expansion of your capacity to love over the preservation of your comfort zone. True love requires sacrificing every attachment that keeps you small, safe, and separate. Most people prefer the security of known limitations to the adventure of unlimited possibility. They choose familiar suffering over unfamiliar freedom because growth requires releasing old versions of themselves. Rumi understood that only those willing to die to their false identity can be reborn into their authentic nature. The gathering he refers to is the community of awakened beings who have chosen expansion over contraction. This is not about romantic love, but about the fundamental force that connects all existence. When you gamble everything for love, you bet your entire life on the possibility that consciousness is more real than matter, that connection is more true than separation, and that joy is more natural than suffering. You risk being wrong about everything you thought you knew in order to discover what you really are. Only those ready for total transformation can handle this level of spiritual gambling. Part 20. Broken Mirror Truth. The truth was a mirror in the hands of God. It fell and broke into pieces. Everybody took a piece of it, and they looked at it and thought they had the truth. This profound metaphor explains why humans experience endless conflict over religious, political, and philosophical differences. Each person or group possesses a fragment of ultimate truth, but mistakes their partial perspective for complete understanding. Wars are fought between people holding different pieces of the same original mirror, each convinced that their reflection shows the only accurate reality. Humility comes from recognizing that your piece, however precious, cannot contain the whole picture. The original mirror represents absolute truth that exists beyond human concepts and categories. When infinite wisdom enters the realm of finite minds, it necessarily appears fragmented because no individual consciousness can contain unlimited reality. Every religion, philosophy, and scientific theory captures some aspect of the whole while missing countless others. The goal is not to possess truth, but to allow truth to possess you by surrendering the need to be right. Practical wisdom emerges when you learn to appreciate the validity in perspectives that seem to contradict your own. Instead of defending your fragment against other fragments, you look for how different pieces might fit together to reveal more of the original mirror. This creates space for dialogue and learning rather than the endless debates that arise from thinking you alone possess the complete picture. Truth becomes a collaborative discovery rather than a competitive possession. Part 21. The Guest House of Experience. This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival. Your consciousness operates like a temporary residence where emotions, thoughts, and experiences visit but do not take up permanent occupancy. Most people make the mistake of identifying with their current guests, believing that anger, sadness, or fear represent who they are rather than what they are temporarily hosting. When you understand yourself as the house rather than the visitors, you maintain stability regardless of which emotions are currently present. Each feeling becomes a messenger with valuable information rather than an invader threatening your peace. The key insight is that you do not have to like your guests to host them gracefully. Resistance to unwanted emotions creates internal conflict and prolongs their stay. When you welcome difficult feelings without trying to change or eliminate them, they often deliver their message and depart naturally. Your role is to remain spacious enough to contain whatever arises without being overwhelmed by any particular visitor. This perspective transforms how you relate to psychological suffering. Instead of seeing difficult emotions as problems to be solved, you recognize them as temporary weather patterns moving through the vast sky of your awareness. Depression, anxiety and anger become honored guests who are teaching you something important about your current life situation. By maintaining the role of gracious host, you develop the inner stability that allows you to support others when they are struggling with their own challenging visitors. Part 22. Drunk on Water. When you are with everyone but me, you are with no one. When you are with no one but me, you are with everyone. This paradox reveals the difference between social connection and spiritual communion. You can be surrounded by people yet feel completely alone when you are disconnected from your essential nature. Conversely, when you are anchored in authentic presence, even physical solitude becomes a state of profound connection with all life. The me Rumi refers to is not his personality, but the universal consciousness that exists within everyone. Most people seek fulfillment through external relationships while remaining strangers to themselves. They collect friends, followers and romantic partners, hoping to fill an inner emptiness that can only be addressed through self-recognition. When you establish genuine intimacy with your own essence, you naturally connect with the same essence in others. Relationship becomes a celebration of shared being rather than a desperate attempt to escape loneliness. The practical application revolutionizes how you approach both solitude and social interaction. Time alone becomes an opportunity to deepen your relationship with the infinite awareness that you are. Time with others becomes an expression of the love and wisdom you have cultivated in solitude. You stop using people to avoid yourself and start sharing yourself to serve others. Part 23. Fire that doesn't burn. Love is the fire that burns all things false and leaves only truth. True love functions as a purifying force that dissolves everything inauthentic in yourself and your relationships. Most people think love means accepting everything about someone without discrimination. Rumi understood that genuine love has the courage to burn away illusions, pretenses, and destructive patterns that prevent deeper intimacy. This fire does not destroy the person, but eliminates whatever keeps them trapped in limited versions of themselves. When you love someone authentically, you refuse to enable their self-destructive behaviors or collude with their false stories about their limitations. This requires tremendous strength because it means risking conflict and rejection to serve their highest good. The fire of love burns through codependency, people-pleasing, and the comfortable lies that maintain superficial harmony at the expense of genuine growth. What remains after this purification is unshakable connection based on truth rather than mutual delusion. This principle applies equally to your relationship with yourself. Self-love means having the courage to face your own shadows, addictions, and unconscious patterns rather than making excuses for them. The fire burns away victim stories, blame, and the comfortable suffering that keeps you small. What emerges is your authentic nature, freed from the false identities that have been limiting your expression and happiness. Part 24. Window not door. Let yourself become living poetry, a moving work of art. This teaching transforms your entire life into creative expression rather than mechanical routine. Most people live according to scripts written by society, family, or their own unconscious programming. Becoming living poetry means allowing each moment to emerge fresh from your authentic response to current circumstances rather than repeating predetermined patterns. Your words, actions and presence become artistic expression of the unique consciousness that you are. Poetry communicates truth through beauty, metaphor and emotional resonance rather than literal information. When you become living poetry, your presence touches others in ways that logical arguments and practical advice cannot reach. You inspire transformation through the quality of your being rather than the content of your knowledge. People feel uplifted and expanded in your presence because you are expressing the creative force of existence itself. The practical application means approaching each interaction as an opportunity for spontaneous creation. Instead of trying to control outcomes or maintain image, you allow genuine responses to arise from your deepest wisdom. Conversations become improvisational art where unexpected insights and connections emerge through mutual presence. Your entire existence becomes a masterpiece in progress rather than a problem to be solved. Part 25. Thorn Garden Roses. The rose laughs at the gardener who throws it away because of its thorns. This metaphor reveals how people reject valuable opportunities because they focus on associated difficulties rather than potential benefits. The thorns represent temporary challenges that protect something precious, while it develops the strength to flourish independently. Most people avoid relationships, careers or creative projects that require effort, discomfort or risk, missing the extraordinary growth and fulfillment available through engagement. The rose knows that its thorns are not defects but necessary features that ensure only those serious about beauty will invest the care required for cultivation. The laughter suggests that wisdom finds amusement in human tendencies to avoid anything that seems difficult. We live in a culture that promises instant gratification and pain-free solutions, creating unrealistic expectations about meaningful achievement. Every worthwhile pursuit involves periods of uncertainty, frustration, and apparent setbacks that test your commitment to the eventual flowering. Those who persist through the thorny phases discover treasures that remain invisible to those who quit at the first sign of discomfort. This understanding transforms your relationship with obstacles and resistance. Instead of interpreting challenges as evidence that you are on the wrong path, you recognize them as natural protection for something valuable that is trying to emerge. Difficulties become allies that strengthen your resolve and eliminate superficial motivations. The thorns ensure that only your authentic desires survive the process of manifestation. Part 26. Midnight Oil Wisdom. The minute I heard my first love story, I started looking for you, not knowing how blind that was. Lovers don't finally meet somewhere. They're in each other all along. This revelation exposes the futility of seeking external completion for internal wholeness. Every love story creates the illusion that fulfillment requires finding the right person, place, or experience outside yourself. The blindness Rumi mentions is the assumption that love is something you get from others rather than something you already are that seeks recognition and expression. True lovers discover that what they were seeking in each other was actually their own essential nature reflected back to them. The deeper teaching reveals that separation is the fundamental illusion that creates all forms of seeking and suffering. When you understand that consciousness is one appearing as many, the search for your other half becomes recognition of your wholeness. Romantic love transforms from desperate need to joyful sharing when you realize you contain everything you thought you lacked. Relationship becomes celebration rather than completion. This principle extends far beyond romantic partnerships to include your relationship with career, purpose, and spiritual fulfillment. The perfect job, calling, or enlightenment you seek is not waiting somewhere in the future, but exists within your current capacity for presence and creativity. You stop looking for your life and start living it. Everything you need to be whole is already present in this moment. Part 27, Surgeon of Hearts. Grief can be the garden of compassion. If you keep your heart open through everything, your pain can become your greatest ally. This teaching reframes suffering as fertilizer for spiritual growth rather than meaningless punishment. When tragedy strikes, most people close their hearts to protect themselves from additional pain. Rumi understood that keeping your heart open during difficult times develops your capacity to feel and serve others who are struggling. The garden metaphor suggests that grief, like compost, can create rich soil for beautiful qualities to grow. Compassion that emerges from personal suffering carries authentic power because it comes from direct experience rather than theoretical understanding. People who have never faced significant challenges often offer hollow advice that feels disconnected from reality. When you allow grief to tenderize your heart instead of hardening it, you become capable of meeting others in their darkest moments with genuine presence. Your own healing journey becomes a gift you can offer to those who face similar struggles. The key phrase is keeping your heart open through everything, which requires tremendous courage and conscious choice. Each moment of pain presents the opportunity to either contract in self-protection or expand in deeper understanding. When you consistently choose openness, you discover that your capacity to feel both pain and joy increases simultaneously. The heart that can hold great sorrow can also contain immense love. Part 28. Sacred Wound. Don't turn away. Keep your gaze on the bandaged place. That's where the light enters you. Most people spend enormous energy avoiding, denying, or numbing their areas of greatest sensitivity and past trauma. The bandaged place represents whatever feels most vulnerable, shameful, or painful in your life experience. Rumi suggests that these wounded areas are actually portals where wisdom and healing can enter your consciousness. What you resist and hide from others often contains your greatest gifts waiting to be discovered and shared. Keeping your gaze on the bandaged place means developing the courage to examine your pain with compassionate curiosity rather than fearful avoidance. This does not mean dwelling obsessively on problems or identifying yourself as damaged. It means recognizing that your most challenging experiences have created unique sensitivity, empathy, and understanding that can serve both your own growth and others' healing. The light that enters through wounds is the illumination that comes from transforming suffering into wisdom. This perspective completely changes how you relate to your personal history and current struggles. Instead of seeing difficulties as evidence of failure or cosmic unfairness, you begin looking for the hidden teachings and strengths they have developed. Your scars become sacred markings that show where life has refined your capacity for love and service. The very experiences you once wished had never happened become sources of your greatest power and contribution. Part 29. Desert Rose Blooming. In your light I learn how to love, in your beauty how to make poems. You dance inside my chest where no one sees you, but sometimes I do, and that sight becomes this art, this music, this form. This verse reveals the secret mechanics of creative inspiration and authentic expression. The you that Rumi addresses is not another person but the divine essence that exists within everyone, including yourself. When you connect with this inner presence, it teaches you how to love without condition and how to create beauty from the raw material of ordinary experience. The dance inside your chest refers to the constant movement of divine creativity within your consciousness. Most artists struggle to access authentic inspiration because they seek it outside themselves or try to force it through technique alone. True creativity emerges when you learn to perceive and express the beauty that is constantly dancing within your awareness. This requires developing inner sensitivity to subtle movements of energy, emotion and insight that most people overlook in their busy lives. When you catch glimpses of this internal dance, it naturally wants to express itself through whatever medium feels most alive to you. The teaching applies to all forms of expression, not just traditional art forms. Your conversations, work projects, and daily interactions can become artistic creations when they emerge from connection with your creative essence. You stop trying to impress others or meet external standards and start allowing authentic beauty to flow through your unique perspective and personality. Life itself becomes your canvas for expressing the divine creativity that lives within you. Part 30. Wine without grapes. Let the beauty of what you love be what you do. This simple instruction provides the most reliable guidance for creating a fulfilling life. Most people separate what they love from what they do, creating an internal split between passion and practicality. They pursue careers, relationships, and activities based on external expectations rather than authentic attraction. Rumi understood that genuine beauty emerges when your actions align with your deepest loves and values. The beauty he refers to is not superficial aesthetics, but the radiance that appears when someone expresses their authentic nature through their choices and actions. When you do what you genuinely love, you bring a quality of presence and enthusiasm that transforms both the activity and everyone who encounters your work. This does not mean avoiding all unpleasant tasks, but approaching them from a foundation of alignment with your core values and purposes. Even difficult work becomes beautiful when it serves something you truly care about. The practical challenge is distinguishing between what you actually love and what you think you should love based on conditioning or comparison. Authentic love feels like coming home to yourself rather than trying to become someone else. It energizes rather than drains you, even when it requires significant effort. When you consistently choose based on genuine love rather than fear or obligation, your entire life becomes an expression of beauty. Part 31. Thirst, Quenching Thirst. Thirst drove me down to the water when I drank the moon's reflection. This poetic image reveals how spiritual seeking often leads to beautiful illusions rather than direct satisfaction. The moon's reflection represents teachings, experiences, and practices that point towards truth, but are not truth itself. You can spend years drinking reflections of enlightenment without ever touching the actual source of the light. The thirst for meaning and fulfillment can become so intense that you mistake symbols for substance. The deeper teaching suggests that thirst itself contains its own resolution when approached with proper understanding. Instead of trying to eliminate desire through satisfaction, you learn to appreciate thirst as a form of communion with the infinite longing that moves all existence. Your spiritual hunger becomes sacred rather than problematic when you recognize it as life force seeking to know itself more fully. The goal shifts from quenching thirst to celebrating it as evidence of your divine nature. This understanding transforms how you relate to all forms of wanting and seeking in your life. Instead of seeing unfulfilled desires as evidence of failure or inadequacy, you begin appreciating them as expressions of infinite creativity, exploring its own potential through your experience. Your longing becomes prayer, and your seeking becomes worship. Even when you drink reflections instead of reality, the process itself becomes a form of spiritual communion. Part 32. Hidden Doorway. There is a secret doorway in every soul. When you have found it, you will understand that this earthly life is just a brief in on an endless journey. The secret doorway represents the passage between ordinary consciousness and transcendent awareness that exists within every human being. Most people live their entire lives without discovering this internal portal because they focus exclusively on external experience. The doorway opens when you learn to turn attention inward and explore the vast dimensions of awareness that exist beyond thought and sensation. This is not achieved through escaping the world, but through recognizing the eternal essence that perceives all temporary experiences. Once you find this doorway and begin exploring what lies beyond it, your entire perspective on life undergoes radical transformation. The problems and achievements that once seemed enormously important are revealed as temporary episodes in an infinite adventure. Death loses its terror because you realize that what you essentially are cannot be destroyed. Birth becomes less mysterious because you recognize that you existed before you entered this particular body and will continue after you leave it. The inn metaphor suggests that earthly life serves as a resting place where consciousness gathers experience and wisdom before continuing its eternal journey. This understanding brings tremendous freedom because you stop taking temporary circumstances so seriously. You can engage fully in human experience while maintaining awareness that it is ultimately a beautiful game. The doorway remains open once you have found it, allowing you to move freely between temporal and eternal perspectives. Part 33. Lightning Lessons. The source of now is here. When you realize this, you are lightning. This teaching reveals that presence is not a state you achieve, but your fundamental nature that you recognize. Most people believe they need to practice mindfulness or meditation to become present, missing the fact that awareness of the present moment is always already here. The source of now refers to the timeless consciousness that witnesses all temporal experience without being contained by any particular moment. When you realize that you are this awareness itself, your entire experience of reality transforms with lightning-like speed. Lightning represents the sudden illumination that occurs when you stop trying to get somewhere and recognize where you already are. This realization does not require years of preparation or gradual development. It can happen instantly when the right understanding strikes. You discover that the peace, joy, and wisdom you have been seeking are not future attainments, but present facts about your essential nature. The seeking mind that was creating suffering through its endless quest for betterment suddenly recognizes its own futility and dissolves. The practical impact of this recognition affects every aspect of daily life. Instead of using the present moment as a means to reach some future goal, you appreciate now as the only reality that ever exists. Planning and goal-setting continue, but from a foundation of contentment rather than lack. You become lightning because your responses arise spontaneously from present-moment awareness rather than past conditioning or future anxiety. Part 34. Empty mirror reflecting. Polish your heart until it becomes a mirror in which the divine reality is reflected without distortion. The heart in mystical traditions refers to the center of consciousness where human and divine awareness meet. Most people have hearts clouded by unprocessed emotions, unconscious fears, and accumulated psychological residue that prevents clear perception. Polishing the heart means systematically removing these obstructions through practices like forgiveness, meditation, and honest self-examination. When the heart becomes perfectly clear, it naturally reflects divine reality without adding personal distortion. The mirror metaphor reveals that spiritual realization is not about becoming something you are not, but about removing what obscures what you already are. Divine reality is always present, but it cannot be perceived clearly through a clouded heart any more than your face can be seen in a dirty mirror. The polishing process involves releasing resentments, dissolving false identities, and healing wounded parts of yourself that create reactive patterns. As these obstacles are cleared, divine presence begins shining through your consciousness with increasing clarity. A perfectly polished heart becomes transparent to divine will and wisdom. Your personal preferences and ego-driven agendas no longer interfere with appropriate response to each situation. You become a clear channel through which universal intelligence can express itself in the world. This does not eliminate your personality, but purifies it so that it serves awakened consciousness rather than unconscious programming. Part 35. Birdcage Freedom. The cage door has always been open, you were just afraid to look. This powerful image addresses the self-imposed limitations that keep people trapped in unsatisfying life patterns. The cage represents belief systems, habits and fears that create the illusion of being stuck when freedom is actually always available. Most people remain in familiar but limiting circumstances because they are afraid to examine whether their restrictions are real or imaginary. The fear of looking comes from the recognition that if the door is indeed open, there is no longer any excuse for remaining small. Looking at the cage door requires honest assessment of which obstacles in your life are genuine and which exist only in your mind. Many people discover that the financial, social or practical barriers they thought prevented them from pursuing their dreams are actually much smaller than they imagined. Others realize that they have been using external circumstances to avoid taking responsibility for their own happiness and fulfillment. The most frightening possibility is discovering that you could have been free all along if you had simply chosen to act differently. Once you look and see that the door is open, remaining in the cage becomes a conscious choice rather than victim circumstance. This brings both tremendous freedom and complete responsibility for your life experience. You can no longer blame parents, society or circumstances for your limitations because you have seen that liberation is always available. The question becomes not whether you can be free, but whether you are willing to accept the adventure and uncertainty that freedom requires. Part 36. Invisible Thread. We are not just drops in the ocean, but the entire ocean in each drop, connected by invisible threads that bind all existence. These invisible threads represent the subtle energetic connections that link all consciousness despite apparent physical separation. Modern quantum physics is beginning to discover what mystics have always known, that everything in the universe is intimately interconnected at levels that cannot be perceived through ordinary senses. When you affect one part of the web of existence, ripples travel instantly to every other part. Your thoughts, emotions and actions influence the entire field of consciousness in ways that are usually invisible but always effective. Understanding these connections transforms how you relate to other people and all life forms. Competition becomes cooperation when you realize that supporting others literally supports yourself because you share the same essential being. Hurting others becomes hurting yourself, and healing others becomes self-healing. Every act of kindness, creativity, or wisdom strengthens the entire network of consciousness that includes everyone you will ever encounter. The practical application means paying attention to how your internal state affects your environment and relationships. When you cultivate peace within yourself, people around you often become more peaceful without any direct intervention from you. When you approach others from genuine love, rather than need or fear, they frequently respond with unexpected openness and warmth. The invisible threads carry the energy of your being far beyond the reach of your words or actions. Part 37. Sacred Mathematics. One went to the door of the beloved and knocked. "Who is there?" he asked. "It is I," she said. "Go away," he said. "There is no room for two here." This famous story reveals the fundamental obstacle to spiritual union in any relationship, divine or human. As long as you maintain the sense of being a separate self trying to connect with something outside yourself, true intimacy remains impossible. The beloved represents not only divine consciousness but also the authentic essence within every person you encounter. When you approach others from ego identity, you create the very separation that prevents genuine meeting. The continuation of the story is equally important, though often overlooked. The seeker goes away, dissolves her sense of separate selfhood, and returns to knock again. "Who is there?" asks the beloved. "It is you," she replies, and the door immediately opens. This represents the recognition that there is only one consciousness appearing as two, one love expressing through apparent multiplicity. Union occurs not when two become one, but when two recognize they have always been one. This understanding revolutionizes all your relationships, from romantic partnership to casual interaction. Instead of trying to get love, understanding or validation from others, you seek to recognize the shared essence that makes real connection possible. Conflict dissolves when you realize you are arguing with yourself. Loneliness becomes impossible when you discover that the love you seek in others is the love you are. Part 38, Desert Oasis Mirage. You are not a drop of water seeking the ocean, you are the ocean that has forgotten its vastness. This teaching completely inverts the traditional spiritual paradigm of the individual seeking union with the universal. Most people spend their lives feeling inadequate and trying to connect with something greater than themselves. Rumi reveals that you are not a limited being attempting to reach unlimited consciousness, but unlimited consciousness that has temporarily identified with a limited form. The spiritual path becomes a process of remembering rather than achieving. Forgetting vastness happens gradually through conditioning that teaches you to identify with your thoughts, emotions, roles, and circumstances. Layer by layer, you construct a false identity based on temporary experiences until you lose touch with your infinite nature. Society reinforces this amnesia by treating everyone as separate individuals, competing for limited resources rather than expressions of one shared being. The forgetting becomes so complete that seeking your true nature feels like an impossible journey toward a distant goal. Remembering your vastness can happen instantly when the right understanding penetrates your false beliefs about limitation. You do not need to become enlightened because enlightenment is what you are. You do not need to find God because God is what you are. You do not need to discover love because love is what you are. The entire spiritual search is the ocean playing at being a drop until it remembers its true nature. When remembering occurs, seeking ends and being begins. Part 39. Alchemy of Attention. Where attention goes, energy flows and life grows. This principle reveals attention as the fundamental creative force that shapes your entire experience of reality. Most people allow their attention to be hijacked by external stimuli, unconscious mental patterns, and other people's agendas. They wonder why their lives feel chaotic and unfulfilling while unconsciously feeding energy into activities and thoughts that do not serve their highest good. Rumi understood that mastering attention is equivalent to mastering life itself. Whatever receives your sustained attention begins growing stronger and more prominent in your experience. If you focus consistently on problems, they multiply and become more complex. If you focus on possibilities and solutions, they develop and manifest. If you focus on what you appreciate about other people, those qualities become more visible and accessible. If you focus on what irritates you about others, those qualities seem to intensify and dominate your interactions. Attention is like sunlight that causes whatever it touches to flourish. The practical application means becoming extremely conscious about where you direct your mental energy throughout each day. Instead of letting attention scatter randomly, you learn to choose its focus based on what you want to create and experience. This does not mean ignoring problems or living in denial, but approaching challenges from a solution-oriented mindset rather than problem-obsessed thinking. Your life begins reflecting the quality of your attention rather than the randomness of your reactions. Part 40. Bread of Presence. Be empty of worrying. Think of who created thought. Worry represents one of the most wasteful uses of human mental energy because it rehearses imaginary problems without generating real solutions. Most people believe that worrying demonstrates care and responsibility, but it actually weakens your ability to respond effectively to challenges. When you worry, you are practicing failure in your imagination and programming your nervous system for anxiety rather than confidence. Emptying yourself of worry creates space for creativity and wisdom to emerge spontaneously. The instruction to think of who created thought points to your essential nature as the awareness that observes all mental activity. If you can watch thoughts arising and disappearing, then you must be something deeper and more stable than thought itself. The same intelligence that creates your capacity to worry can create peace, clarity, and effective action when you align with it properly. By identifying with the thinker rather than thoughts, you gain access to unlimited problem-solving capacity that transcends mental analysis. Practical application means catching yourself in worry patterns and redirecting attention to what can be done in the present moment with available resources. Instead of mentally rehearsing imaginary catastrophes, you focus on constructive action that addresses real circumstances. This shift from worry to presence often reveals obvious solutions that anxiety had made invisible. You learn to trust the creative intelligence that designed your brain to provide whatever insights are needed when they are needed. Part 41, Mountain Teaching Valley. The quieter you become, the more you can hear. This teaching reveals how mental noise prevents access to subtle forms of guidance and wisdom that are always available. Most people live with constant internal chatter that drowns out the quiet voice of intuition, creativity, and spiritual insight. They make decisions based on loud emotions and habitual thinking rather than the deeper intelligence that emerges in states of inner stillness. Learning to quiet the mind creates space for information that cannot be heard above the volume of ordinary mental activity. The more you can hear refers not only to external sounds, but to subtle, energetic communications, intuitive knowings, and creative inspirations that arise in silence. Many breakthrough discoveries in science, art, and business have emerged from quiet moments when the analytical mind relaxed its grip and allowed deeper wisdom to surface. Relationships improve dramatically when you learn to listen from stillness rather than preparing your next response while others are speaking. You begin hearing the essence of what people are communicating beneath their actual words. Developing inner quietude does not require formal meditation, though such practices can be helpful. You can cultivate stillness by taking conscious pauses throughout the day, spending time in nature, or simply slowing down your pace of activity. The key is recognizing that silence is not empty space, but pregnant potential, containing infinite possibilities. When you become comfortable with quietude, you discover that silence is actually the source from which all meaningful communication emerges. Part 42, Divine Bookkeeper. Let go of your mind and then be mindful. Close your ears and listen. This paradoxical instruction points to the difference between ordinary thinking and enlightened awareness. Letting go of your mind means releasing attachment to the constant stream of thoughts, judgments, and mental commentary that usually dominates consciousness. Being mindful in this context means maintaining alert presence without being caught up in mental activity. You become aware of thinking without identifying yourself as the thinker. Closing your ears refers to shutting out the external noise and internal mental chatter that prevents deep listening. Most people are so busy processing information and formulating responses that they miss the subtle communications happening on energetic and intuitive levels. When you close your ordinary ears and listen with your whole being, you begin hearing the wisdom that emerges from silence itself. This includes creative insights, solutions to complex problems, and guidance about important life decisions. The practice involves learning to rest in aware presence without trying to think your way to understanding. Instead of analyzing experiences through mental concepts, you allow direct knowing to emerge from your contact with reality. This develops a completely different way of processing information that is more accurate and efficient than analytical thinking. You begin living from wisdom rather than knowledge, presence rather than planning. Part 43, Fire-Water Unity. Fire and water do not fight in the enlightened heart, they dance. This image represents the resolution of seemingly contradictory qualities within integrated consciousness. Fire symbolizes passion, intensity, and the active principle that drives creation and achievement. Water represents receptivity, flow, and the passive principle that accepts and adapts to circumstances. Most people experience these qualities as conflicting forces that create internal tension and confusion about how to live authentically. In ordinary consciousness, you feel torn between being assertive and yielding, structured and spontaneous, independent and connected. The enlightened heart discovers that these apparent opposites are actually complementary aspects of a complete response to life. Instead of choosing one quality over another, or trying to find compromise between them, you learn to express both simultaneously when appropriate. This creates a dynamic balance that is far more effective than rigid adherence to either extreme. The dance metaphor suggests that opposing qualities can enhance each other when they are properly coordinated. Your passion becomes more sustainable when it is tempered by wisdom and receptivity. Your flexibility becomes more effective when it is guided by clear intention and purpose. You develop the capacity to be simultaneously strong and gentle, decisive and open, committed and detached. This integration eliminates internal conflict and allows you to respond to each situation with whatever combination of qualities serves the highest good. Part 44. Garden Snake Wisdom. Don't be satisfied with stories. How things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth. This powerful instruction challenges you to stop living according to other people's templates and discover your unique path of expression and fulfillment. Most people pattern their lives after family expectations, cultural norms, or inspiring stories about successful individuals. While these examples can provide guidance and motivation, they cannot substitute for the direct discovery of your own purpose and potential. Your myth is the unique story that wants to unfold through your particular combination of gifts, interests, and circumstances. Being satisfied with stories about how things have gone with others keeps you trapped in imitation rather than authentic creation. You may achieve external success by following proven formulas, but you will miss the deep fulfillment that comes from expressing your original contribution to the world. Every person contains possibilities that have never been explored before and can only be discovered through direct experimentation with their own nature. Your myth cannot be predicted or planned, but must be lived into existence through courageous choices and authentic responses to life's circumstances. Unfolding your myth requires willingness to disappoint others who expect you to fulfill their dreams rather than your own. It means trusting your inner guidance even when it leads you away from conventional definitions of success and security. The process involves continuous discovery of who you are beneath social conditioning and family programming. Your true myth emerges when you stop trying to become someone else and start exploring the infinite possibilities contained within your authentic self. Part 45. Thunder without storm. What hurts you blesses you. Darkness is your candle. This profound teaching reframes all difficult experiences as disguised opportunities for growth and awakening. Most people resist pain and seek to eliminate it as quickly as possible, missing the transformative potential contained within challenging circumstances. What hurts you often exposes false beliefs, unconscious patterns, and areas of your life that need attention and healing. The blessing emerges when you learn to work with difficulties as allies rather than enemies. Darkness representing your candle suggests that your deepest struggles contain the illumination needed for your spiritual development. Just as a candle provides light specifically because it burns in darkness, your capacity for wisdom and compassion develops through engaging with, rather than avoiding difficult experiences. The darkness forces you to find inner resources and strengths that would remain dormant in easy circumstances. Every challenge becomes a sacred initiation that prepares you for greater levels of service and understanding. This perspective does not mean seeking suffering or remaining in harmful situations longer than necessary. It means approaching inevitable difficulties with curiosity about what they might be teaching rather than pure resistance. You begin asking what qualities want to develop through each challenge, and how your current struggle might be preparing you to help others who face similar circumstances. Pain transforms from meaningless punishment into meaningful preparation for your highest contribution to the world. Part 46. Moonbridge Walking. Cross the bridge of your own understanding. No one else can walk it for you. This metaphor emphasizes that spiritual understanding must be earned through direct experience rather than borrowed from others. Many people try to adopt the insights and practices of teachers, books, or traditions without doing the internal work necessary to make them genuine. The bridge of understanding is built through your own experimentation with truth, your own mistakes and discoveries, and your own integration of lessons learned. No one else can provide you with ready-made wisdom that truly serves your unique path of development. Walking your own bridge requires courage to trust your direct experience, even when it contradicts popular teachings or expert opinions. You must learn to distinguish between what feels true in your own consciousness and what you think you should believe based on external authority. This does not mean rejecting all guidance from others, but filtering everything through your own discernment and inner knowing. The understanding that emerges from this process has authentic power because it grows from your actual experience rather than conceptual knowledge. The bridge metaphor also suggests that understanding is not a destination, but a means of traveling between different states of consciousness. Each insight you gain through direct experience becomes a stable foundation for exploring even deeper levels of reality. Your personal bridge of understanding becomes stronger and more reliable as you use it, eventually allowing you to guide others who are building their own bridges. The wisdom you develop through your unique journey becomes a gift you can offer without trying to force others to follow your exact path. Part 47. Honeybee Teaching. Be like a honeybee, taking the essence from many flowers but harming none. This beautiful metaphor provides guidance for how to learn from diverse sources while maintaining your own authentic center. The honeybee visits countless flowers but does not become any particular flower, instead using each encounter to create something entirely new and valuable. Similarly, you can extract wisdom from many teachers, traditions, and experiences without losing your individual identity or purpose. The key is learning to recognize universal truths that appear in different forms, rather than getting attached to any specific packaging. Harming none refers to approaching different wisdom traditions with respect and gratitude rather than criticism or comparison. Many people damage their own learning by judging some approaches as superior to others, instead of appreciating what each has to offer. When you approach different teachings like a bee visiting flowers, you remain open to receiving gifts from unexpected sources. Even traditions that seem incompatible with your current beliefs may contain essential nutrients for your spiritual development. The honey that results from this process represents integrated wisdom that serves both your own growth and the nourishment of others. Just as honey has healing properties that neither individual flowers nor bees possess alone, your synthesized understanding becomes medicine for the world. You develop the capacity to translate universal truths into forms that meet people where they are, rather than insisting they adopt your particular spiritual vocabulary. Your unique combination of influences creates possibilities for serving others that would not exist if you had followed only one path. Part 48. River Seeking Ocean. You were born with potential, you were born with goodness and trust, you were born with ideals and dreams, you were born with greatness. You were born with wings, you already have everything you need. This affirmation directly contradicts the cultural programming that teaches people they're fundamentally lacking and must acquire value through achievement, approval, or external success. From the moment of birth, you contain unlimited potential that exists independently of your circumstances, background, or current level of development. The goodness and trust Rumi mentions refer to your essential nature before it becomes clouded by defensive patterns and survival fears. Recognizing what you already possess eliminates the desperate seeking that keeps people trapped in cycles of temporary satisfaction and renewed emptiness. The ideals and dreams that arise naturally in childhood often represent authentic callings from your deepest nature, rather than fantasies to be outgrown. Society tends to crush these original visions through practical concerns and realistic expectations, causing people to abandon their most inspiring possibilities. Rumi suggests that these early dreams contain valid information about your unique contribution to the world. The wings represent your capacity to transcend current limitations and explore territories of experience that seem impossible from your present perspective. Having everything you need does not mean you lack nothing, but that you possess the essential resources required for fulfilling your authentic purpose. This includes intelligence, creativity, love, and the capacity to learn whatever skills your vision requires. External resources appear when you begin expressing your authentic gifts, rather than trying to become someone you are not. The entire universe supports you when you align with your true nature, because your fulfillment serves the evolution of consciousness itself. Part 49. Star Compass Navigation. Let yourself be drawn by the stronger pull of that which you truly love. It will not lead you astray. Authentic love functions as infallible guidance because it connects you to the intelligence that designed your unique role in the cosmic plan. The stronger pull Rumi describes is the magnetic attraction you feel toward activities, people, and purposes that serve your soul's evolution. This guidance often conflicts with rational analysis, social expectations, and fear-based decision-making. Learning to trust love's pull requires developing faith that your deepest longings are aligned with universal wisdom rather than personal delusion. The assurance that love will not lead you astray does not mean the path will be easy or immediately successful in conventional terms. Following authentic love often leads through uncertainty, challenges, and periods of apparent failure that test your commitment to truth. However, these difficulties serve your highest development by strengthening your capacity to love more deeply and serve more effectively. What appears to be getting lost is actually the process of finding your way to destinations that rational planning could never reach. Distinguishing authentic love from ego attraction requires honest self-examination and experimentation with different choices. True love feels like coming home to yourself rather than trying to become someone else. It energizes rather than drains you, even when it requires significant effort. Following this guidance consistently creates a life of authentic fulfillment that serves both your individual happiness and collective well-being. You become a living example of what becomes possible when someone trusts the wisdom of their heart over the fears of their mind. Part 50. Crystal Cave Secrets. Silence is not the absence of sound, but the presence of infinity. This teaching reveals silence as a positive quality rather than merely the lack of noise. Most people experience silence as empty space to be filled with activity, entertainment, or mental stimulation. Rumi understood that true silence contains unlimited potential and is actually the source from which all meaningful expression emerges. When you learn to rest in silence without discomfort, you access dimensions of awareness that remain invisible when consciousness is occupied with external activity. The presence of infinity in silence refers to the timeless awareness that exists beyond all temporal experience. In deep silence, you contact the eternal aspect of your nature that has never been born and will never die. This connection provides unshakable peace and wisdom that cannot be disturbed by changing circumstances. The infinity present in silence is not a concept, but a direct experience of consciousness without boundaries or limitations. Practical application means creating regular periods of complete stillness where you listen to what cannot be heard with your ears. In this receptive space, solutions to complex problems often appear without logical analysis. Creative insights arise spontaneously when you stop trying to force inspiration through mental effort. Your relationships improve when you learn to communicate from the silence that underlies words rather than just exchanging concepts and opinions. Silence becomes a refuge where you can restore connection with your essential nature regardless of external chaos. Part 51. Phoenix Heart Rising. Your depression is connected to your insolence and refusal to praise. If there is no rapture in your heart, it is because you do not listen to yourself. This challenging teaching suggests that depression often stems from disconnection from your own authentic nature and appreciation for existence itself. Insolence refers to the arrogant assumption that life should conform to your preferences rather than recognizing the intelligence operating through all circumstances. Refusal to praise means being unable to find beauty, meaning or value in your current experience. When you consistently focus on what is wrong rather than what is miraculous about being alive, your emotional state naturally becomes heavy and lifeless. Not listening to yourself means ignoring the quiet voice of inner wisdom that constantly offers guidance about authentic choices and authentic expression. Most people override their intuitive knowing with logical analysis, social expectations, or fear-based decisions. Over time, this disconnection from internal guidance creates a sense of being lost and meaningless that manifests as depression. The rapture that is missing comes from aligning your choices with your deepest truth rather than external pressures. The medicine for this condition involves developing gratitude for the gift of consciousness itself and learning to trust your inner knowing. This does not mean denying genuine suffering or avoiding necessary therapeutic support. It means recognizing that beneath psychological symptoms lies a soul that is calling for authentic expression and meaningful engagement with life. When you begin listening to and following your authentic impulses, depression often lifts naturally as you reconnect with your purpose and vitality. Part 52. Diamond Mind Cutting. Your intelligence is always with you, overseeing your body, even though you may not be aware of its work. This teaching points to the vast intelligence that operates your physical systems, maintains your psychological balance, and guides your spiritual development without any conscious effort on your part. The same wisdom that coordinates billions of cellular activities also orchestrates the circumstances and relationships that serve your highest learning and growth. Most people take this intelligence for granted and attempt to control their lives through willpower alone, missing opportunities to collaborate with forces far more knowledgeable than their rational minds. Recognition of this constant support transforms anxiety into trust and struggle into flow. Your intelligence refers not only to mental capacity, but to the fundamental awareness that animates your entire being. This awareness knows exactly what experiences you need for optimal development and attracts them through means that often seem mysterious or coincidental. When you begin cooperating with this intelligence, rather than fighting against it, Obstacles become opportunities, and challenges become adventures. Your personal will aligns with universal wisdom instead of trying to impose limited human plans on infinite creative potential. Becoming aware of this intelligence's work requires paying attention to the subtle guidance that appears through intuition, synchronicity, and unexpected opportunities. You begin noticing how apparent problems often lead to solutions you could never have planned. Difficult people become teachers who help you develop patience and compassion. Failed projects redirect you toward more appropriate expressions of your gifts. When you recognize this intelligence as your constant companion, life becomes a collaborative dance rather than a solo struggle. Part 53, Garden of Forgetfulness. If you want to learn about your mind, sit down and observe it. If you want to learn about your soul, stand up and live. This instruction reveals the difference between studying consciousness and embodying it through authentic action. Observing the mind through meditation and self-reflection provides valuable insights about psychological patterns and mental conditioning. However, this knowledge remains theoretical until you begin applying it through courageous choices and authentic expression in daily life. Soul wisdom emerges through living rather than thinking, through engagement rather than withdrawal. Standing up and living means taking risks based on your deepest convictions, rather than playing it safe to avoid discomfort or failure. Your soul reveals its nature through how you respond to challenges, how you treat others, and what you choose to create or contribute. The qualities of courage, compassion, and creativity that you admire in others can only be developed through practicing them in real situations rather than imagining how you might behave. Soul learning happens through experience rather than concept, through embodiment rather than understanding. This teaching suggests that spiritual development requires both contemplative practices and active engagement with the world. Sitting meditation without life application can become spiritual escape that avoids the real work of transformation. Living without reflection can become unconscious activity that misses opportunities for growth and awareness. The integration of both approaches creates wisdom that is both grounded in experience and illuminated by understanding. Your soul emerges through the marriage of contemplation and action, being and doing. Part 54. Thunder Teaching Rain. The privilege of a lifetime is being who you are. The pain of a lifetime is pretending to be someone else. This teaching identifies the fundamental choice that determines whether your life becomes an expression of joy or suffering. Being who you are means discovering and expressing your authentic nature rather than conforming to external expectations about who you should become. This requires enormous courage because it involves disappointing people who prefer the version of you that meets their needs rather than your true self. The privilege emerges from the deep satisfaction and effortless energy that comes from authentic self-expression. Pretending to be someone else creates constant internal tension because you must continuously monitor and adjust your behavior to maintain a false identity. This exhausting performance prevents you from accessing your natural gifts and contributing your unique perspective to the world. The pain intensifies over time as the gap between your authentic self and performed self becomes wider and more difficult to maintain. Eventually, the energy required to sustain false identity becomes unbearable and forces a choice between breakdown and breakthrough. The irony is that most people pretend to be someone else in order to be loved and accepted, but this strategy actually prevents genuine intimacy. Others cannot truly love you when they are relating to a false presentation rather than your authentic self. When you risk being real, you discover that the acceptance you sought through pretending naturally emerges through authenticity. People are attracted to genuine expression because it gives them permission to be real themselves. The privilege of being yourself includes inspiring others to claim the same privilege for themselves. Part 55. Ancient Future Memory. Remember that wherever your heart is, there you will find your treasure. Your heart's true direction points toward whatever serves your highest fulfillment and most meaningful contribution to the world. Most people ignore heart guidance because it often leads away from conventional definitions of security and success. The treasure Rumi refers to is not material wealth, but the deep satisfaction that comes from aligning your choices with your authentic purpose and values. When you consistently follow your heart despite external pressures, you discover resources and opportunities that logical planning could never access. This teaching suggests that your heart already knows where your treasure lies, even when your mind feels confused about direction and priorities. The challenge is learning to distinguish between authentic heart guidance and emotional reactions based on fear, desire, or conditioning. True heart wisdom feels peaceful and energizing, even when it points toward uncertain territory. It draws you forward through attraction rather than pushing you through anxiety or desperation. Following your heart requires faith that the universe supports authentic expression rather than forcing predetermined outcomes. When you align with your true direction, circumstances often rearrange themselves in ways that seem magical, but are actually natural responses to authentic choice. The treasure you find includes not only personal fulfillment, but the joy of contributing something valuable to others. Your heart leads you toward the intersection between your unique gifts and the world's genuine needs. Part 56. Moonlight Water Dancing. You have been my friend in the daytime, be my friend in the nighttime too. This verse addresses the tendency to abandon spiritual practices and conscious living when faced with difficult circumstances or dark emotional states. Many people maintain connection with their higher nature during pleasant times, but lose faith when life becomes challenging. True spiritual friendship means remaining loyal to wisdom and love, even when they seem to offer no immediate relief from suffering. The nighttime represents periods of confusion, loss, or testing when your commitment to growth and truth faces its strongest challenges. Daytime friendship is relatively easy because spiritual principles seem to work and provide obvious benefits when circumstances are favorable. Nighttime friendship requires trusting that the same wisdom that serves you in good times continues operating even when its benefits are not immediately visible. This deeper level of commitment transforms spiritual practice from conditional strategy into unconditional devotion. You begin relating to truth as a beloved companion rather than a useful tool. The practical application involves maintaining your core practices and values, especially when you feel least motivated to do so. This might mean continuing meditation when your mind is chaotic, expressing gratitude when nothing seems worth appreciating, or treating others kindly when you feel irritated and defensive. These moments of conscious choice during difficult times create the strongest foundation for lasting transformation. Your spiritual friend becomes most valuable precisely when external circumstances provide no support for conscious living. Part 57. Eagle Teaching Sparrow. Don't worry about saving these songs. If the Spirit wants them to continue, they will continue, and if not, they will stop. This teaching addresses the anxiety many people feel about preserving their creative works, relationships, or life accomplishments for future generations. The songs represent anything you have created or contributed that feels valuable and worthy of continuation. Rumi suggests that attachment to outcomes and desperate efforts to ensure permanence actually interfere with the natural flow of creative expression. What is meant to continue will find ways to survive and flourish regardless of your protective efforts. The spirit refers to the universal intelligence that orchestrates all meaningful creation and evolution. This force knows which expressions serve the ongoing development of consciousness and which have completed their purpose. When you align with this intelligence rather than trying to control outcomes through personal will, your creative work becomes more powerful and authentic. You focus on creating from inspiration rather than preserving from fear. This understanding transforms how you approach all forms of contribution and legacy building. Instead of desperately trying to make your mark on the world, you become a clear channel for whatever wants to emerge through your unique talents and perspective. You create because creation feels authentic rather than because you need external validation or immortality. What continues does so because it genuinely serves others, and what stops has fulfilled its purpose. This removes the burden of needing to justify your existence through permanent achievements. Part 58. Spiderweb Universe. The universe is not outside of you. Look inside yourself. Everything that you want, you already are. This radical teaching challenges the fundamental assumption that fulfillment requires acquiring something external to your current experience. Most people spend their lives seeking love, peace, wisdom and happiness from other people, achievements, or circumstances. Rumi reveals that every quality you admire or desire already exists within your consciousness, waiting to be recognized and expressed. The universe is not a separate entity that you live within, but an expression of the same consciousness that you fundamentally are. Looking inside yourself means exploring the vast dimensions of awareness that exist beyond your thoughts, emotions, and sensory experiences. This inner universe contains infinite creativity, unlimited love, and perfect wisdom that can be accessed through contemplative practices and authentic self-exploration. What you seek in relationships, careers, and achievements are actually qualities of your essential nature, reflected back to you through external mirrors. When you recognize these qualities as already present within yourself, your approach to life transforms from desperate seeking to joyful sharing. The practical impact eliminates victim mentality and creates genuine self-reliance that paradoxically enhances your capacity for healthy relationships and meaningful contribution. Instead of trying to get what you need from others, you focus on expressing what you are to serve others. This shift from neediness to generosity naturally attracts exactly the experiences and connections that support your highest fulfillment. You become the source of what you seek, rather than a beggar hoping others will provide it. Part 59. Sacred Intersection. At some point, you have to stop running towards people who aren't running towards you. This wisdom addresses the painful pattern of investing emotional energy in relationships where genuine reciprocity and mutual care are absent. Many people exhaust themselves trying to earn love and attention from individuals who remain emotionally unavailable or consistently prioritize other relationships. The running metaphor suggests desperate effort to create connection with people who are either indifferent or moving in opposite directions. Recognizing this pattern requires honest assessment of whether your relational investments are generating mutual growth and satisfaction. The deeper teaching reveals that chasing unavailable people often stems from unconscious attempts to resolve childhood wounds or prove your worthiness to those who cannot see your value. This creates cycles of disappointment and rejection that reinforce negative beliefs about your lovability. When you stop running toward people who aren't running toward you, you create space for connections with individuals who genuinely appreciate and reciprocate your caring. Your energy becomes available for relationships that naturally flow with mutual respect and affection. This principle applies not only to romantic relationships, but to friendships, professional connections, and any situation where you consistently give more than you receive. Learning to recognize and honor reciprocity creates healthier boundaries and attracts people who are capable of genuine intimacy. You begin investing your limited time and energy in relationships that nourish rather than drain your emotional resources. This shift often reveals how much energy you have been wasting on one-sided connections and how much becomes available when you redirect it toward mutual relationships. Part 60. Eternal Sunrise. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. Tomorrow I will be love, so I will simply be. This progression reveals 3 stages of spiritual maturity that represent the evolution from ego-driven action to enlightened being. Cleverness operates from the assumption that you know what needs to be fixed and have the power to impose solutions through effort and manipulation. This stage often creates more problems than it solves because it fails to address the root causes of dysfunction which exist within consciousness itself. Cleverness exhausts itself through endless attempts to rearrange external circumstances without transforming internal awareness. Wisdom recognizes that your experience of the world is generated by your internal state and changes naturally when consciousness evolves. Instead of trying to fix others or control circumstances, you focus on healing your own wounded patterns and expressing your highest qualities. This creates authentic transformation that ripples outward without force or manipulation. Others naturally respond to your increased peace, clarity, and love without feeling pressured to change. The final stage transcends both doing and becoming in favor of pure being. When you realize that love is what you essentially are rather than something you do or feel, all effort to improve yourself or others becomes unnecessary. Your presence alone becomes a healing force in the world because you no longer obstruct the natural expression of divine love through your personality. Simply being becomes the highest form of service because it allows others to recognize and express their own essential nature. This completes the circle from seeking love to becoming love to recognizing that you have always been love itself. Part 61. Mirror without reflection. When you become the rose, you will know the thorn was never separate from you. This teaching reveals how apparent opposites are actually aspects of the same unified reality. Most people experience life as a constant struggle between desirable and undesirable elements, pleasure and pain, success and failure. The rose represents your beautiful, lovable nature, while the thorn symbolizes your defensive, difficult qualities. When you achieve integration, you recognize that both aspects serve the complete expression of who you are. The thorn is not a mistake or defect, but a necessary protection for something precious while it develops the strength to flourish independently. Your difficult qualities often emerge from deep wounds that require careful healing rather than harsh judgment. When you embrace these shadowy aspects with compassion, they transform into strengths that serve your authentic expression. The very traits you most dislike about yourself often contain the seeds of your greatest gifts. Becoming the rose means accepting your complete nature rather than trying to eliminate parts of yourself that seem problematic. This integration creates genuine self-love that no longer depends on being perfect or meeting external standards. Others feel safe in your presence because you have made peace with your own humanity. Your thorns and petals work together to create a complete being capable of both tenderness and appropriate boundaries. Part 62. Invisible Thread Weaving. There is a force within you that knows exactly what you need. Trust it completely. This inner force represents the intelligence that coordinates your physical healing, emotional balance, and spiritual development without any conscious effort from your personality. The same wisdom that grows your hair and heals your cuts also orchestrates the experiences and relationships that serve your highest learning. Most people override this natural guidance with mental planning and social conditioning, missing opportunities for effortless growth and fulfillment. Learning to trust this force requires distinguishing between authentic inner knowing and fearful mental chatter. Trusting completely means following your deepest impulses, even when they contradict logical analysis or external expectations. This inner force operates through intuition, synchronicity, and unexpected opportunities that appear when you remain open and receptive. It knows timing, relationships, and circumstances that serve your development in ways your rational mind cannot calculate or predict. The more you honor this guidance, the more clearly it communicates and the more smoothly your life unfolds. This trust develops gradually through experimenting with small intuitive promptings and noticing their results. You begin recognizing the difference between authentic guidance that feels peaceful and ego impulses that feel desperate or anxious. Over time, this inner force becomes your primary navigation system for all important decisions. You discover that what you thought was uncertainty was actually your deepest wisdom waiting for you to become quiet enough to hear it. Part 63. Thunder before lightning. Your pain is the breaking of the shell that encloses your understanding. This metaphor reveals pain as the natural process through which consciousness expands beyond its current limitations. The shell represents fixed beliefs, habitual patterns, and comfort zones that provide security but eventually become prisons that prevent further growth. When life circumstances create enough pressure, these protective structures crack open to allow new levels of awareness and capability to emerge. What feels like devastating loss or failure is often consciousness preparing to access previously unavailable potentials. Understanding this process transforms how you relate to difficult experiences and personal crises. Instead of seeing pain as evidence that something is wrong, you begin recognizing it as labor pains preceding the birth of expanded awareness. This does not mean seeking suffering or remaining in harmful situations, but approaching inevitable challenges with curiosity about what new capacities they might be developing. The shell must break for the eagle to emerge, and temporary discomfort serves this essential transformation. The practical application involves staying present with difficult emotions rather than immediately trying to escape or fix them. You learn to ask what understanding wants to emerge through each challenging experience. This often reveals insights about relationships, purpose, or self-worth that could not have been accessed through comfortable circumstances. Your capacity to help others also expands because you have navigated territories of experience that many people avoid. Part 64, Desert Oasis Reality. The whole universe is contained within you. Everything you see in the external world exists first in your consciousness. This teaching challenges the common assumption that consciousness is produced by the brain and experiences a world that exists independently of awareness. Rumi understood that consciousness is the fundamental reality within which all experience arises, including the experience of having a physical body and living in a material world. The external universe you perceive is actually a projection of internal states, beliefs and levels of awareness rather than an objective reality separate from your consciousness. This means that changing your inner world automatically transforms your outer experience. When you realize that everything exists within consciousness, you gain tremendous power to reshape your reality through internal transformation. Instead of feeling victimized by circumstances, you recognize yourself as the creator of your experience. This does not mean that physical events are illusions, but that your interpretation and response to events determines their meaning and impact on your life. Two people can experience identical circumstances, yet have completely different realities based on their internal state and perspective. The practical application involves taking responsibility for your internal state, rather than waiting for external conditions to change before you can be happy. You begin cultivating the consciousness you want to experience, rather than hoping the world will provide it for you. This creates genuine freedom, because your fulfillment no longer depends on controlling circumstances beyond your influence. The universe within you contains unlimited possibilities that can manifest through your choices and creative expression. Part 65. Sacred Geometry of Love. Love is not an emotion, it is your very existence. This revelation completely reframes how most people understand and seek love in their lives. Emotions are temporary experiences that arise and disappear within consciousness, but your essential nature is the love that remains constant regardless of changing feelings. When you identify love with emotional states, you become dependent on external triggers to feel loving and lovable. Recognizing love as your existence means discovering an inexhaustible source of love that cannot be gained or lost through any circumstance. This understanding eliminates the desperate seeking that characterizes most romantic relationships and friendships. Instead of trying to get love from others, you become interested in expressing the love that you are. Relationships transform from needy transactions into celebrations of shared being. You no longer need others to love you in order to feel lovable, because you recognize love as the very fabric of your consciousness. The practical impact affects every interaction and decision in your daily life. You begin approaching challenges from love rather than fear, seeing how each situation provides an opportunity to express your essential nature. Conflicts become invitations to practice loving more skillfully, rather than battles to be won. Your presence becomes naturally healing, because you no longer obstruct the flow of love through defensive patterns or emotional reactivity. Work, creativity and service emerge from this foundation of being love rather than seeking love. Part 66. Eternal Compass. Your task is not to seek love, but to find all the barriers you have built against it in yourself. This instruction shifts spiritual practice from acquisition to subtraction, from becoming to uncovering what has always been present. The barriers against love include judgment, resentment, fear of vulnerability, and protective mechanisms developed in response to past hurts. These obstacles seem to provide safety but actually prevent the intimacy and connection that your soul craves. Each barrier you dissolve reveals more of your natural capacity to give and receive love freely. Finding these barriers requires honest self-examination of how you withhold love from yourself and others. This might include noticing when you judge people for their mistakes, when you protect yourself through emotional distance, or when you demand that others change before you can love them. Each barrier represents a place where you have chosen self-protection over authentic connection. Dismantling these defenses requires courage because it means risking the very hurts that caused you to build walls in the first place. The process of removing barriers often reveals that what you thought was protecting you was actually imprisoning you. Forgiveness becomes possible when you realize that holding resentment hurts you more than the person who wronged you. Vulnerability becomes strength when you discover that authenticity creates deeper connections than performance or pretense. Each barrier removed increases your capacity to love more people more deeply while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Part 67. River Teaching Stone. Be water, my friend, flow around obstacles rather than fighting them. This ancient wisdom teaches the power of adaptation and flexibility in navigating life's inevitable challenges. Water achieves extraordinary results not through force but through persistence, patience, and the ability to find creative solutions when direct paths are blocked. Most people exhaust themselves pushing against obstacles that could be circumnavigated through more intelligent approaches. Learning to flow like water means maintaining your essential direction while adapting your methods to current circumstances. Flowing around obstacles requires releasing attachment to specific strategies and remaining open to unexpected solutions. When your preferred approach meets resistance, water consciousness looks for alternative routes rather than increasing pressure. This might mean timing your actions differently, approaching people through relationships they trust, or finding indirect ways to achieve your goals. The obstacle often becomes an ally that teaches you more effective methods than you would have discovered without resistance. Water also demonstrates the power of persistence over time rather than dramatic force in the moment. Small, consistent actions can create profound transformations that aggressive efforts cannot achieve. Your daily choices and habitual responses shape your life more powerfully than occasional bursts of intense effort. By embodying water consciousness, you accomplish your authentic purposes while maintaining peace and conserving energy for what matters most. Part 68. Midnight Sun Paradox. In the midst of winter, I found there was within me an invincible summer. This teaching reveals the inner resources that remain available even during the most challenging external circumstances. Winter represents periods of loss, difficulty, or apparent hopelessness when external support systems have failed or disappeared. The invincible summer within you refers to qualities like hope, creativity, and resilience that cannot be destroyed by any circumstance. These inner resources often remain hidden until crisis forces you to discover strengths you did not know you possessed. Finding your invincible summer requires learning to distinguish between temporary circumstances and eternal qualities. External conditions are always changing and will inevitably include periods of difficulty and loss. Your essential nature contains sources of warmth, light, and vitality that exist independently of what happens around you. Accessing these resources often requires turning attention inward when outer circumstances provide no comfort or hope. This discovery transforms how you relate to difficult periods in your life. Instead of waiting for circumstances to improve before you can feel better, you learn to kindle inner warmth that sustains you through external cold. Your invincible summer becomes a gift you can share with others who are experiencing their own winters. You become a source of encouragement and inspiration because you have discovered that no external condition can destroy the light within consciousness itself. Part 69. Sacred Architecture. Your body is a temple. Keep it pure and clean for the soul to reside in. This teaching reveals the relationship between physical care and spiritual development that many people either ignore or misunderstand. Treating your body as a temple means recognizing it as the sacred vehicle through which consciousness experiences and expresses itself in physical reality. Purity and cleanliness refer not only to hygiene and health, but to feeding your body foods and experiences that support clarity and vitality. When your physical form is well maintained, it becomes a more effective instrument for spiritual awareness and creative expression. Many spiritual seekers make the mistake of either obsessing over physical perfection or completely neglecting bodily needs in favor of mental practices. Rumi understood that body and soul are partners in the dance of awakening rather than enemies competing for attention. Your physical form requires care and respect to function optimally as a vehicle for consciousness. This includes proper nutrition, adequate rest, regular movement, and avoiding substances or activities that cloud mental clarity. The temple metaphor also suggests that your body deserves the same reverence you would show to any sacred space. This transforms daily activities like eating, sleeping, and exercising into opportunities for spiritual practice. You begin listening to your body's wisdom about what it needs, rather than imposing arbitrary rules or ignoring its signals. When your physical temple is maintained with love and respect, it naturally supports the highest expressions of your consciousness. Part 70. Echo Chamber Silence. Speak only when your words are more beautiful than silence. This guideline transforms communication from automatic reaction into conscious artistic expression. Most people fill space with unnecessary words out of discomfort with silence, anxiety about being heard, or unconscious habits that add noise without value. Beautiful words are those that genuinely serve connection, understanding, or inspiration, rather than simply expressing personal opinions or emotions. Learning to appreciate silence creates space for more meaningful communication when words are truly needed. Beautiful words emerge from a deeper place than mental commentary or emotional reaction. They arise from genuine care for others, authentic wisdom gained through experience, or creative inspiration that wants to be shared. This requires developing sensitivity to when speaking serves the situation and when remaining quiet allows others space to process, respond, or simply enjoy peaceful presence. Quality of communication becomes more important than quantity of expression. Practicing this teaching dramatically improves the quality of your relationships and interactions. People feel more comfortable in your presence because they are not overwhelmed by unnecessary conversation or defensive about potential judgment. When you do speak, others listen more carefully because they know your words have been chosen thoughtfully. Your communication becomes more powerful because it emerges from deeper awareness rather than surface reactions. Silence becomes a friend that enhances rather than threatens your connections with others. Part 71. Invisible Garden Growing. The garden of love is green without limit and yields many fruits other than sorrow and joy. This metaphor reveals love as an infinite creative force that produces far more than the emotional states usually associated with romantic relationships. Most people limit love to feelings of attraction, attachment, or sentiment that fluctuate based on circumstances and compatibility. The garden of love represents consciousness itself as an inexhaustible source of creativity, wisdom, and blessing that serves all life. When you tend this inner garden through spiritual practice and authentic expression, it yields fruits that nourish both yourself and everyone you encounter. The fruits beyond sorrow and joy include qualities like compassion, courage, understanding, forgiveness, and the capacity to see beauty in unexpected places. These treasures emerge naturally when love is cultivated as a way of being rather than pursued as an emotional experience. Your inner garden produces whatever is needed to serve each situation you encounter throughout your life. This abundance increases through sharing rather than depleting through use. Tending the garden of love involves regular practices that maintain your connection to the source of authentic caring. This might include meditation, service to others, creative expression, or simply approaching daily activities with greater presence and appreciation. The garden flourishes when you consistently choose responses that serve growth rather than feeding old patterns of fear and reactivity. Over time, your entire life becomes an expression of love's infinite creativity rather than a search for love's temporary satisfactions. Part 72. Crystal Mountain Climbing. Every moment is a fresh beginning. Don't carry the past into the now. This teaching addresses one of the primary obstacles to presence and authentic response in daily life. Most people interpret current situations through the filter of past experiences, missing the unique opportunities and solutions available in each fresh moment. Carrying the past into the now means approaching present circumstances with predetermined expectations, old resentments, or habitual reactive patterns. This prevents you from seeing what is actually happening and responding with the creativity and wisdom that each situation calls forth. Fresh beginning means that consciousness is continuously creating new possibilities that did not exist in previous moments. The person you are speaking with right now is not the same person they were yesterday because consciousness is constantly evolving. The situation you are facing contains potential solutions that your past experience could not predict or imagine. When you meet each moment with genuine openness, it can teach you things that all your accumulated knowledge never revealed. Practicing this requires developing the capacity to release completed experiences rather than holding on to them as reference points for current decisions. This does not mean ignoring practical lessons learned from the past, but avoiding emotional residue that distorts present perception. Each conversation becomes an opportunity for new understanding rather than confirmation of old beliefs. Your responses become fresh expressions of current awareness rather than repetitions of historical patterns. Life becomes an adventure of continuous discovery rather than endless repetition of familiar themes. Part 73. Phoenix Song Rising. What you plant in the soil of contemplation, you will harvest in the garden of action. This principle reveals the essential relationship between inner development and outer effectiveness in all areas of life. Contemplation includes any practice that deepens your understanding of yourself, others, and the nature of reality. The quality of your internal reflection directly determines the wisdom and skillfulness of your external choices and behaviors. When you invest time in genuine self-examination and spiritual practice, this inner work naturally expresses itself through more conscious and effective action. Most people try to improve their external results without addressing the internal states that generate their behavior. They attempt to force better outcomes through willpower while maintaining the same beliefs, emotions, and mental patterns that created previous difficulties. Soil of contemplation means creating regular time and space for honest reflection about your motivations, reactions, and the deeper purposes that guide your choices. This inner preparation allows more authentic and skillful responses to emerge naturally when action is required. The harvest metaphor suggests that results in the outer world appear automatically when inner cultivation has been sufficient. You do not have to strain to make good decisions when you have developed clarity about your values and purposes. Relationships improve spontaneously when you have worked through your own emotional reactivity and defensive patterns. Creative projects flow more easily when you have connected with authentic inspiration through contemplative practice. The action becomes a natural expression of the consciousness you have cultivated rather than desperate effort to achieve predetermined outcomes. Part 74. Dancing with Shadows. The dark places in your life are actually where your power lies hidden. This teaching challenges the common tendency to avoid, deny, or fix the aspects of yourself and your life that feel most uncomfortable or shameful. Dark places include past traumas, current struggles, personality traits you dislike, and areas where you feel inadequate or unsuccessful. Most people invest enormous energy trying to eliminate these shadows or pretend they do not exist. Rumi understood that these rejected aspects often contain your greatest potential for growth, creativity, and authentic service to others. Power lies hidden in dark places because they force you to develop qualities and insights that comfortable circumstances never require. Your most difficult experiences often become the source of your deepest wisdom and greatest compassion for others who face similar challenges. The very traits you most dislike about yourself may contain the seeds of your most valuable contributions when transformed through conscious attention. Your wounds become your gifts when you learn to work with them skillfully rather than trying to make them disappear. This does not mean seeking suffering or remaining in harmful situations, but learning to mine the gold that exists within inevitable difficulties. You begin asking what strengths want to develop through each challenge, and how your current struggle might prepare you to help others. Your personal darkness becomes a source of light when you stop fighting it and start learning from it. The power you discover in your shadows often exceeds anything you achieve through your strengths because it emerges from authentic transformation rather than natural talent. Part 75. Sacred Geometry Hearts. Love is the cure, for your pain will keep giving birth to more pain until your eyes constantly exhale love as effortlessly as your body yields its scent. This profound teaching reveals the mechanism through which suffering perpetuates itself and the only genuine solution to breaking painful cycles. Unresolved pain creates reactive patterns that generate more situations and relationships that trigger similar wounds. Until you learn to respond to hurt with love rather than protection or retaliation, you remain trapped in repetitive experiences that confirm your worst fears about life and relationships. The cure is not eliminating pain, but transforming your relationship with it through cultivating unconditional love. Eyes that constantly exhale love represents a fundamental shift in how you perceive and respond to all experience. Just as your body naturally releases its scent without conscious effort, mature consciousness naturally expresses love regardless of external circumstances. This does not mean becoming passive or accepting harmful treatment, but maintaining an open heart while taking appropriate action to protect yourself and others. Love becomes your natural response to life, rather than something you do only when conditions feel safe or pleasant. Achieving this level of spiritual maturity usually requires years of practice and often involves working through significant emotional healing. You must learn to distinguish between love and emotional attachment, between compassion and codependency. True love includes the strength to set boundaries and the wisdom to know when distance serves healing better than proximity. When love becomes as natural as breathing, your presence alone begins healing the pain in others without any deliberate effort on your part. Part 76, Desert Rose Patience. Patience is not sitting and waiting, it is foreseeing, it is looking at the thorn and seeing the rose. This teaching redefines patience as active wisdom rather than passive endurance. Most people think patience means tolerating unpleasant circumstances while hoping they will eventually improve. True patience involves seeing the potential that exists within current difficulties and working skillfully with present conditions to support that potential's emergence. Looking at the thorn and seeing the rose means recognizing the hidden gifts and opportunities that exist within every challenging situation. Foreseeing requires developing faith in the natural process of growth and transformation that operates through all experience. Just as seeds contain fully developed plants that emerge under proper conditions, your current struggles contain the wisdom, strength, and clarity that will serve your future fulfillment. This perspective allows you to work with difficulties as allies rather than enemies, understanding that they are providing exactly what you need for your development. Patience becomes participation in the creative process rather than resignation to unwanted circumstances. This approach transforms how you relate to everything from personal healing to professional goals to relationship challenges. Instead of trying to force outcomes or escape from discomfort, you learn to trust the timing of natural development while contributing whatever serves the process. You begin seeing setbacks as necessary preparation and delays as opportunities for better preparation. Your patience becomes a form of love that honors the perfect timing inherent in all authentic growth and achievement. Part 77. Moonbeam Architecture. When you walk to the edge of all the light you have and take that first step into the darkness of the unknown, you must believe that one of two things will happen. There will be something solid for you to stand upon, or you will be taught how to fly. This teaching addresses the fear that prevents most people from pursuing their authentic dreams and expressing their full potential. The edge of all the light you have represents the limit of your current knowledge, skills, and comfort zone. Taking the first step into darkness means making choices based on faith rather than certainty, following your heart's calling, even when you cannot predict outcomes. Most people remain trapped in unsatisfying situations because they demand guarantees before taking risks that could lead to fulfillment. Something solid to stand upon suggests that when you follow authentic inspiration, the universe provides resources and opportunities that support your path. What seemed like an impossible leap often reveals itself as a natural next step, when you have the courage to begin. Being taught how to fly represents discovering capabilities you never knew you possessed, when circumstances require you to transcend previous limitations. Both outcomes lead to expansion and growth that would never occur if you waited for complete security before taking action. This principle applies to every situation where growth requires releasing the familiar to discover the possible. Career changes, relationships, creative projects, and spiritual development all involve walking to the edge of known territory and trusting the process of learning through experience. The fear of falling often prevents the flight that was always waiting to be discovered. Your wings emerge through the act of jumping rather than through preparation that postpones authentic action indefinitely. Part 78, Thunder Teaching Silence. Respond to every call that excites your spirit. This instruction provides clear guidance for making authentic choices in a world full of competing demands and expectations. Calls that excite your spirit are invitations from life that create genuine enthusiasm and energy, rather than obligation or duty. Most people ignore these callings because they seem impractical, risky, or incompatible with their current responsibilities. Rumi understood that spiritual excitement is actually divine intelligence expressing through your individual consciousness, pointing toward experiences that serve your highest development. Learning to distinguish between authentic spiritual excitement and ego-driven desires requires honest self-examination. True callings feel like coming home to yourself rather than trying to become someone else or impress others. They generate sustainable energy over time rather than momentary thrills that quickly fade. Spiritual excitement often involves serving something larger than personal gain, though it simultaneously fulfills your deepest need for meaningful expression. Responding to every such call does not mean abandoning all practical considerations, but finding ways to honor authentic inspiration within the context of your current circumstances. This might mean starting small, taking incremental steps, or finding creative ways to integrate your calling with existing responsibilities. The key is maintaining yes to life's invitations rather than automatically saying no due to fear or convenience. Each time you respond to authentic excitement, you strengthen your capacity to recognize and follow guidance that leads to fulfillment. Part 79. Sacred Mathematics. Be like the sun for grace and mercy. Be like the night to cover others' faults. Be like running water for generosity. Be like death for rage and anger. Be like the earth for modesty. Appear as you are. Be as you appear. This teaching provides a complete template for enlightened character that integrates the best qualities of natural elements. Being like the sun for grace and mercy means shining your light on everyone equally, regardless of their behavior or worthiness. The sun does not choose who receives its warmth and illumination. It simply expresses its nature consistently. Similarly, mature consciousness offers grace and mercy as natural expressions rather than rewards for good behavior. Being like the night to cover others' faults suggests protecting people's dignity by not exposing their mistakes or weaknesses unnecessarily. Just as darkness provides privacy and rest, your discretion allows others space to heal and grow without public shame. This does not mean enabling destructive behavior, but approaching others' imperfections with compassion rather than judgment. Your silence about their faults becomes a gift that supports their transformation rather than a weapon that confirms their limitations. The final instruction to appear as you are and be as you appear eliminates the exhausting split between public presentation and private reality. Authentic living means expressing your genuine nature consistently rather than performing different versions of yourself for different audiences. This integration creates trustworthy relationships where others know they are encountering the real you rather than a carefully managed image. When your inner and outer worlds align, your presence becomes naturally healing because people feel safe to be authentic in response to your authenticity. Part 80. Lightning Wisdom Flash. Set your life on fire. Seek those who fan your flames. This powerful instruction challenges the common tendency to live cautiously and surround yourself with people who support your comfort zone rather than your growth. Setting your life on fire means pursuing your deepest passions and purposes with such intensity that your existence becomes luminous and inspiring. Most people dim their inner flame to avoid conflict, criticism, or the responsibility that comes with shining brightly. Living with fire means choosing authenticity and excellence, even when they require more effort than mediocrity and conformity. Seeking those who fan your flames involves choosing relationships with people who encourage your highest expression, rather than those who prefer you to remain small and manageable. Many people unconsciously select friends and partners who support their limitations because growth threatens the familiar dynamics of stagnant relationships. True friends want you to succeed even when your success challenges them to expand their own possibilities. They celebrate your victories rather than minimizing them and support your dreams rather than listing reasons why they are impossible. This does not mean abandoning everyone who cannot initially support your transformation, but prioritizing time and energy for relationships that nourish your authentic development. You become more valuable to others when you express your full potential rather than hiding your light to make them comfortable. Your fire gives others permission to kindle their own flames rather than requiring them to remain dim. Living on fire becomes service to everyone who encounters the inspiration and possibility that radiate from authentic self-expression. Part 81. Ocean Drop Teaching. You are not a drop in the ocean, you are the entire ocean in a drop. This fundamental teaching appears repeatedly in Rumi's work because it addresses the core illusion that creates most human suffering. Experiencing yourself as a separate drop creates feelings of inadequacy, competition, and fear about your survival and significance. Recognizing yourself as the ocean appearing as a drop transforms every aspect of how you relate to yourself, others, and all experience. You contain the same essential qualities as every other expression of consciousness, differing only in temporary form and individual perspective. When you know yourself as the ocean, comparison becomes impossible because you cannot be greater or lesser than yourself. Competition transforms into collaboration because supporting others is literally supporting different aspects of your own being. Fear dissolves because what you essentially are cannot be threatened by any circumstance or experience. Your individual gifts become expressions of universal creativity rather than personal possessions to be protected or accumulated. This understanding generates natural compassion because you recognize the same struggles and potentials in others that you experience in yourself. Their joy becomes your joy, and their pain becomes motivation for you to express more love and wisdom. You stop trying to get what you need from others and start giving what you are to serve the awakening of consciousness through all its expressions. Life becomes a celebration of the ocean recognizing itself through infinite temporary forms rather than drops struggling to survive in separation. Part 82. Sacred Breath Teaching. Let go of your mind and then be mindful. Close your ears and listen. This paradoxical instruction points toward a completely different way of processing experience that transcends ordinary thinking and hearing. Letting go of your mind means releasing attachment to the constant stream of mental commentary that usually dominates consciousness. Being mindful in this context means maintaining alert awareness without being identified with thought processes. You observe thinking without believing that you are the thinker or that thoughts represent reality. Closing your ears refers to shutting out both external noise and internal mental chatter that prevents deeper forms of perception. When you stop listening to the familiar voices of fear, desire, and social conditioning, space opens for wisdom to emerge from silence itself. This deeper listening reveals insights, solutions, and creative possibilities that mental analysis cannot access. The guidance you receive through this practice is often more accurate and useful than advice from experts or conclusions from logical reasoning. Developing this capacity requires regular practice of sitting in silence without trying to achieve any particular state or outcome. You simply rest in aware presence and allow whatever wants to emerge from that stillness. Over time, this becomes a reliable resource for accessing wisdom during daily activities and important decisions. You learn to respond from deeper knowing rather than reactive patterns, creating more skillful and effective action in all areas of your life. Part 83. Mirror Lake Reflecting. Everything that happens to you is a reflection of what you radiate. This teaching reveals how your internal state creates the external experiences you encounter rather than being created by them. What you radiate includes not only your conscious thoughts and emotions, but also unconscious beliefs, energy patterns, and unresolved psychological material. The universe functions like a perfect mirror that reflects back experiences matching your internal frequency rather than random events happening to an innocent victim. This means you have far more power to shape your reality than most people realize, but also more responsibility for what you experience. Understanding this principle transforms how you approach problems and challenges in your life. Instead of trying to change external circumstances through force or manipulation, you examine what internal states might be attracting difficult experiences. This does not mean blaming yourself for negative events, but taking responsibility for your part in creating patterns that repeat throughout your life. When you change what you radiate through inner work and conscious choice, your outer world naturally transforms to match your new internal reality. The practical application involves paying attention to the quality of energy you bring to each situation and relationship. If you consistently attract conflict, you might examine whether you are radiating defensiveness or judgment that provokes others to respond aggressively. If you feel disconnected from others, you might notice whether you are withholding your authentic self out of fear of rejection. Your external experiences become teachers that reveal exactly what internal transformation is needed for your continued growth and fulfillment. Part 84. Phoenix Rising Dance. Your greatest wound will become your greatest wisdom, but only if you allow the wound to transform rather than trying to heal it. This subtle distinction completely changes how you approach personal healing and psychological growth. Most people try to eliminate painful experiences or return to a state that existed before trauma occurred. Transformation means allowing the wound to teach you something essential that could not be learned any other way, integrating the experience rather than erasing it. Your greatest wisdom often emerges from your deepest suffering when you work with it skillfully rather than simply trying to make it disappear. Allowing transformation requires staying present with difficult emotions and experiences long enough for their hidden gifts to emerge. This might mean feeling grief without rushing to move beyond it, exploring anger without immediately releasing it, or sitting with fear without trying to eliminate it. The wound contains information about what needs to heal, what boundaries need to be established, or what unconscious patterns need to be recognized. When you listen to your pain rather than medicating it, it often reveals exactly what steps are needed for genuine healing and growth. This does not mean prolonging suffering unnecessarily or avoiding therapeutic support when needed. It means approaching healing as an opportunity for development rather than a return to previous innocence. Your wound becomes sacred when it develops qualities like compassion, wisdom, and strength that serve both your own evolution and your capacity to help others. The very experience you most wish had never happened often becomes the source of your greatest contribution to the world. Part 85, Invisible Thread Weaving. When you remember me, it means I have remembered you. This mystical teaching reveals the interconnected nature of consciousness that operates beyond the limitations of physical separation and linear time. The me that Rumi refers to is not his historical personality, but the universal awareness that exists within all beings. When you feel sudden inspiration, unexpected love, or spontaneous wisdom, these experiences represent moments when individual consciousness recognizes its connection to the infinite source. The remembering happens simultaneously from both directions because there is ultimately only one consciousness appearing as many. This principle explains why certain teachings, people, or experiences feel immediately familiar even when encountered for the first time. Recognition occurs because you are meeting aspects of your own essential nature reflected through external forms. The love you feel for spiritual teachers or wise friends is actually your recognition of the same wisdom and love that exist within your own consciousness. They serve as mirrors that help you remember what you have temporarily forgotten about your true nature. Understanding this interconnection transforms how you relate to inspiration and guidance in your daily life. Instead of seeing wisdom as something you receive from outside sources, you recognize it as your own inner knowing being awakened through contact with others who embody similar awareness. Prayer and meditation become conversations with different aspects of your own infinite nature rather than requests to separate entities. You begin trusting the synchronicities and meaningful coincidences that appear when you are aligned with authentic purpose because you understand them as communications from your deeper wisdom. Part 86, Sacred Wound Healing. A wound is the place where the light enters you. This profound metaphor reveals how apparent disasters often serve as initiations into expanded awareness and deeper compassion. Wounds create openings in the protective shell of ego that normally prevents divine light from penetrating ordinary consciousness. When life breaks you open through loss, betrayal, or failure, these cracks become doorways through which wisdom and love can enter dimensions of your being that were previously inaccessible. The wound itself becomes sacred because it provides exactly the opening required for your spiritual development. Most people try to close wounds as quickly as possible to restore their previous sense of security and control. While physical healing is essential, psychological and spiritual wounds often need to remain open long enough for their transformative gifts to emerge. This requires tremendous courage because it means staying vulnerable when every instinct demands protection. The light that enters through wounds includes insights about your authentic values, capacity for resilience, and ability to love others who face similar struggles. The healing that results from this process is different from simply returning to your previous state. You become more than you were before the wound occurred because you have integrated new levels of understanding and compassion. Your scars become sacred markings that show where light has entered and transformed your consciousness. Others recognize this light and are naturally drawn to you for healing and guidance, because you have traveled territories of experience that many people avoid. Your wound becomes a gift, not only to yourself but to everyone who benefits from the wisdom and compassion it has developed within you. Part 87. Eternal Student Learning. Travel brings power and love back into your life. This teaching uses travel as a metaphor for any experience that expands your perspective beyond familiar territory and comfortable assumptions. Physical travel to new places naturally challenges your habitual ways of thinking and being by exposing you to different cultures, customs, and ways of solving common human problems. The power that returns includes increased confidence in your ability to adapt, create, and thrive in unfamiliar circumstances. Love expands because you discover the fundamental humanity you share with people whose surface expressions appear completely different from your own. Metaphorical travel includes any activity that takes you beyond your current comfort zone and forces growth through new challenges. This might mean learning new skills, exploring different spiritual practices, building relationships with people unlike yourself, or taking on responsibilities that require capabilities you have not yet developed. Each time you venture into unknown territory, you discover resources and potentials that remain invisible within familiar routines. The person who returns from such adventures is always expanded compared to the person who began the journey. The power and love that travel brings back serve not only your personal development, but your capacity to contribute to others. Expanded perspective allows you to see solutions to problems that seemed impossible from your previous vantage point. Increased love enables you to connect with and serve people you might have previously judged or avoided. Your willingness to explore unknown territories gives others permission to take their own adventurous steps toward growth and discovery. Travel becomes a form of service because it increases your ability to love and empower others through your expanded consciousness. Part 88. Diamond Cutting Diamond. In silence there is eloquence. Stop weaving and see how the pattern improves. This teaching reveals how mental activity often interferes with the natural intelligence that operates when the mind becomes quiet. Weaving represents the constant mental effort to control, plan, and manipulate outcomes through thinking and strategizing. Most people believe that more mental activity leads to better results, but often the opposite is true. When you stop trying to force solutions and allow space for deeper wisdom to emerge, more elegant and effective approaches often appear spontaneously. Eloquence in silence refers to the profound communication that happens when you are fully present without needing to fill space with words or actions. Your silent presence often provides exactly what others need more effectively than advice, suggestions, or attempts to fix their problems. Silence allows others space to discover their own answers rather than becoming dependent on your solutions. The pattern that improves includes both your inner state and the quality of your relationships when you learn to trust natural timing rather than forcing premature action. This principle applies to creative projects, problem-solving, and relationship challenges where excessive mental effort often creates more complexity rather than clarity. Learning to rest in not knowing while remaining alert and responsive allows solutions to emerge from deeper levels of intelligence. Your best decisions often arise from stillness rather than analysis, and your most effective actions flow from presence rather than planning. The pattern of your entire life improves when you learn to balance necessary thinking with receptive silence that accesses wisdom beyond mental comprehension. Part 89. River-Ocean Return. You are not separate from the whole. You are one with the sun, the earth, the air. You don't have a life, you are life. This ultimate teaching dissolves the fundamental illusion of separation that creates most forms of human suffering and limitation. Believing yourself to be separate from life creates the experience of being an isolated individual, struggling to survive and find meaning in an indifferent universe. Recognizing that you are life itself expressing through temporary human form transforms every aspect of your existence from struggle to celebration. You stop trying to get life to work for you and start allowing life to work through you. Being one with the sun, earth and air means that the same intelligence that moves planets and grows forests also animates your consciousness and coordinates your experiences. You are not separate from the creative force that designed your body, orchestrates your relationships, and guides your spiritual development. This recognition eliminates the anxiety that comes from feeling responsible for controlling outcomes beyond your influence. You can relax into cooperation with forces that are infinitely more knowledgeable than your personal mind while still taking appropriate action in each situation. Not having a life, but being life means that existence is not something that happens to you, but something that you fundamentally are. Problems become temporary experiences within eternal consciousness, rather than threats to your survival or happiness. Success and failure both become expressions of life, exploring its own potentials through your unique perspective. Death loses its terror, because you realize that what you essentially are cannot be destroyed by any change in form or circumstance. You begin living as the infinite creative force that you have always been, rather than the limited story you thought you were. Part 90. Sacred Mathematics Complete. Love says, I am everything. Wisdom says, I am nothing. Between these two my life flows. This profound teaching reveals the dynamic tension between two essential spiritual realizations that together create balanced, awakened living. Love's declaration of being everything represents the recognition that consciousness is the fundamental reality within which all experience arises. From this perspective, you contain the entire universe and are connected to every being through shared essential nature. This realization generates unlimited compassion and the confidence to express your gifts boldly in service of all life. Wisdom's declaration of being nothing represents the recognition that your personal identity is ultimately an illusion created by temporary thoughts, memories, and social roles. From this perspective, there is no separate self to defend or aggrandize, which creates profound humility and freedom from ego-driven suffering. This realization generates natural selflessness and the ability to serve others without needing credit or reward. Both perspectives are equally true and essential for complete spiritual development. Life flowing between these realizations means that mature consciousness expresses both universal love and personal humility simultaneously. You can act with tremendous confidence when serving authentic purposes, while maintaining complete detachment from personal recognition or success. You love everyone as yourself because you recognize shared being, yet you take nothing personally because you know individual identity is ultimately empty. This creates the perfect balance of engagement and detachment that allows you to serve powerfully while remaining peaceful regardless of outcomes. Your life becomes a dance between being everything and nothing, which paradoxically makes you completely human and completely divine. Part 91. Infinite Mirror Reflecting. When you feel a peaceful joy, that's when you are near truth. This teaching provides a reliable indicator for recognizing authentic spiritual insight and aligned action in your daily life. Peaceful joy combines the serenity of acceptance with the energy of inspiration, creating a unique emotional signature that accompanies genuine wisdom. This state is different from excitement, which can be driven by ego desires, and different from resignation, which lacks creative energy. When you experience peaceful joy, you can trust that you are aligned with truth regardless of external circumstances or other people's opinions. Many people mistake emotional intensity or dramatic experiences for spiritual truth, but authentic realization usually feels natural and sustainable rather than overwhelming. Peaceful joy indicates that you have found harmony between your human personality and divine essence. This alignment creates effortless energy because you are expressing your authentic nature rather than trying to become someone you are not. Decisions made from this state tend to serve both your individual fulfillment and collective well-being because personal truth and universal truth converge. Learning to recognize and cultivate peaceful joy becomes a practical guidance system for navigating life's complexities. You can evaluate relationships, career choices, and creative projects by noticing whether they generate this quality of consciousness. When peaceful joy is absent, you can examine what internal adjustments might restore alignment with truth. This might mean changing your approach, releasing attachment to outcomes, or addressing unconscious fears that are blocking your natural state. Over time, peaceful joy becomes your normal state rather than a rare experience, indicating that you are living authentically most of the time. Part 92. Thunder without storm. Let yourself be gutted. Let it open. You start here. This challenging instruction addresses the spiritual necessity of allowing life to break you open completely rather than maintaining superficial comfort through avoidance and protection. Being gutted means experiencing the complete dissolution of false identity, comfortable illusions, and protective mechanisms that prevent authentic transformation. Most people spend enormous energy avoiding this process. But spiritual maturity often requires surrendering everything you think you are to discover what you actually are. The gutting is not punishment, but preparation for rebirth into expanded consciousness. Letting it open you means remaining receptive to the transformative power of difficult experiences rather than closing down to protect yourself from pain. This requires tremendous courage because it involves feeling everything without the buffer of denial, distraction, or premature healing. The opening that results creates space for new levels of wisdom, compassion, and creative capacity that could not emerge while you were still defending your old identity. What feels like destruction is actually reconstruction at a higher level of integration and authenticity. Starting here means beginning your spiritual journey from whatever difficult circumstances you are currently facing, rather than waiting for better conditions. You do not need to fix your life before you can begin awakening, because the awakening happens through working skillfully with present challenges. Your current struggles contain exactly the medicine needed for your spiritual development when approached with the right understanding. The very situation you most want to escape often becomes the doorway to the freedom and wisdom you seek. Starting here transforms every difficulty into an opportunity for growth rather than an obstacle to happiness. Part 93. Sacred Fool Dancing. Sell your cleverness and buy bewilderment. You don't get it by planning. This instruction challenges the modern obsession with strategic thinking and mental control as the primary means of achieving spiritual understanding and life fulfillment. Cleverness represents the accumulation of concepts, techniques, and analytical approaches that promise to solve life's mysteries through intellectual effort. Bewilderment is the state of not knowing that creates space for direct experience and spontaneous insight that cannot be achieved through mental activity. Most breakthrough discoveries in science, art, and spirituality emerge from bewildered exploration rather than systematic planning. You don't get it by planning means that the most important realizations about consciousness, love, and authentic purpose cannot be achieved through strategic effort. These insights arise spontaneously when conditions are right, often in moments of relaxed attention rather than focused striving. Planning has its place in practical affairs, but it becomes counterproductive when applied to domains that require receptivity and surrender. The spiritual path involves learning when to plan and when to trust the intelligence that operates beyond mental comprehension. Buying bewilderment means cultivating comfort with uncertainty and not knowing as positive states rather than problems to be solved. This requires releasing the need to understand everything before taking action and developing faith in the process of learning through experience. Bewilderment opens doorways that cleverness cannot even perceive because it approaches reality with fresh eyes rather than predetermined expectations. Your greatest discoveries often emerge when you abandon your clever plans and allow yourself to be guided by wonder and curiosity rather than control and analysis. Part 94. Lightning Teaching Thunder. The truth is not always beautiful, nor beautiful words the truth. This teaching develops discrimination between authentic spiritual insight and attractive philosophies that may sound appealing but lack transformative power. Beautiful words can seduce the mind with elegant concepts that provide temporary comfort without generating real change in consciousness or behavior. Truth often appears harsh or challenging because it exposes illusions that you prefer to maintain rather than offering reassuring confirmations of existing beliefs. Genuine spiritual teaching may initially disturb your peace rather than enhance it because it requires releasing familiar patterns that no longer serve your growth. Many people choose spiritual practices and teachers based on how good the teachings make them feel, rather than how effectively they promote actual transformation. This leads to spiritual materialism, where you collect beautiful ideas without allowing them to change your fundamental relationship with reality. Truth may require you to admit mistakes, change behaviors, or release attachments that provide security but prevent freedom. The medicine you need for healing may not taste pleasant, even though it provides exactly what serves your highest good. Developing this discrimination allows you to receive authentic guidance even when it challenges your preferences or contradicts popular opinion. You begin evaluating spiritual teachings and life advice based on their practical results rather than their emotional appeal. This might mean choosing difficult conversations over comfortable silence, honest self-examination over self-congratulation, or challenging growth over familiar stagnation. Truth becomes your ally rather than your enemy when you realize that temporary discomfort often precedes lasting transformation and genuine happiness. Part 95. Ocean Teaching Drop. When someone beats a rug, the blows are not against the rug but against the dust in it. This metaphor provides profound insight into how apparent attacks and criticisms often serve purification rather than destruction. The rug represents your essential nature, which is always pure and cannot be damaged by any external circumstance or treatment. The dust represents accumulated psychological debris, false beliefs, and unconscious patterns that obscure your natural clarity and goodness. When life beats you through difficult experiences or challenging people, these blows often target the dust rather than your core being. Understanding this transforms how you relate to criticism, conflict, and various forms of opposition in your life. Instead of taking everything personally and feeling attacked, you can examine whether feedback might be accurately identifying areas where growth and cleaning are needed. The person who criticizes you may be serving as an unconscious agent of purification, even if their motivations seem hostile or unfair. Their blows may be removing exactly the psychological dust that has been preventing your natural radiance from shining clearly. This does not mean accepting abuse or remaining in harmful situations, but learning to extract value from difficult experiences rather than only feeling victimized by them. You can protect yourself appropriately while also asking what internal cleaning might be occurring through external pressure. Often the very criticism that hurts most deeply points to an area of genuine unconsciousness that needs attention and healing. When you focus on removing the dust rather than defending the rug, conflicts become opportunities for purification rather than evidence of persecution. Your essential nature emerges more clearly each time dust is removed, regardless of how uncomfortable the cleaning process feels. Part 96. Sacred Compass Navigation. The only lasting beauty is the beauty of the heart. This teaching reveals why external beauty, achievements and possessions provide only temporary satisfaction, while inner beauty creates lasting fulfillment. Physical attractiveness fades with time, material possessions lose their novelty, and external accomplishments become yesterday's news. Beauty of the heart includes qualities like kindness, wisdom, courage, and authenticity that actually increase with age and experience. These inner treasures cannot be lost through changing circumstances and become more valuable as you mature rather than less. Heart beauty also refers to the capacity to perceive and appreciate beauty in all its forms, rather than being limited to conventional standards. When your heart is open and clear, you can find beauty in simple moments, ordinary people, and challenging circumstances that others overlook. This inner eye for beauty creates a constantly enriching experience of life because you are not dependent on external sources to provide aesthetic nourishment. You become a creator of beauty rather than only a consumer of it. Cultivating heart beauty involves developing the qualities and perspectives that make your inner world more beautiful. This includes practicing forgiveness to clear resentment, expressing gratitude to enhance appreciation, and choosing love over fear in daily interactions. As your heart becomes more beautiful, others naturally feel more beautiful in your presence because you reflect their essential goodness back to them. Your lasting beauty becomes a gift that enhances the world rather than just decorating it. This beauty continues radiating even after your physical form is gone because it lives in the hearts of everyone you have touched with authentic love. Part 97. Eternal Dance Ending. What you seek is seeking you. This final profound teaching reveals that the spiritual search itself is evidence of the divine calling you home to yourself. Every authentic desire for love, truth, beauty, or meaning represents the universe reaching toward consciousness through your individual awareness. What you seek is not separate from you, but is the very essence of your being trying to recognize itself through your experiences and relationships. The seeking ends when you realize that you already are what you have been looking for all along. This principle explains why certain teachings, people, or experiences feel immediately familiar even when encountered for the first time. Recognition occurs because you are meeting external reflections of your own inner wisdom and love. The teacher who inspires you is awakening knowledge that already exists within your consciousness. The beloved who captivates you is reflecting the love that is your essential nature back to you in a form you can perceive and appreciate. Understanding that what you seek is seeking you transforms desperate searching into receptive allowing. Instead of chasing fulfillment through effort and acquisition, you learn to create conditions that allow your authentic nature to emerge and express itself. You stop trying to become enlightened and start removing whatever obscures the enlightenment that is already present. The search becomes a dance of recognition rather than a journey towards a distant goal. What seeks you through your seeking is your own infinite nature calling you home to the truth that you have never actually left. Part 98, Mirror Breaking Light. Don't be satisfied with stories, how things have gone with others. Unfold your own myth. This teaching challenges you to stop living according to inherited templates and discover the unique story that wants to unfold through your particular combination of gifts, interests, and circumstances. Stories of how things have gone with others include family expectations, cultural norms, and inspiring examples that can provide guidance but cannot substitute for direct exploration of your own possibilities. Your myth is not a fantasy, but the authentic pattern of meaning and purpose that emerges when you follow your deepest callings rather than external prescriptions. This unique story can only be discovered through living it rather than planning it. Unfolding your myth requires willingness to disappoint people who expect you to fulfill their dreams rather than your own. It means trusting your inner guidance even when it leads away from conventional definitions of success and security. The process involves continuous discovery of who you are beneath social conditioning and family programming. Your true myth reveals itself through the choices you make when you stop trying to become someone else and start exploring what wants to emerge through your authentic expression. This does not mean rejecting all wisdom from others, but filtering everything through your own experience and discernment. You learn from many sources while maintaining responsibility for creating your own unique synthesis. Your myth becomes a gift not only to yourself but to everyone who benefits from witnessing what becomes possible when someone follows their authentic path completely. The story you create by being fully yourself gives others permission to unfold their own myths rather than copying yours or anyone else's template for living. Part 99, Sacred Completion Circle. Yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I'm wise, so I am changing myself. This teaching represents the maturation from external activism to internal transformation as the primary means of serving collective evolution. Cleverness sees problems as existing outside consciousness and believes they can be fixed through manipulation of circumstances, people, and systems. Wisdom recognizes that your experience of the world is generated by your internal state and changes naturally when consciousness transforms. This shift from trying to fix others to healing yourself is not selfish, but the most effective way to contribute to planetary awakening. Changing yourself ripples outward in ways that direct attempts to change others cannot achieve. When you embody peace, you naturally inspire peace in those around you without trying to convince anyone of anything. Your transformation gives others permission to transform because they see living proof that change is possible. The energy you previously invested in trying to control external circumstances becomes available for the inner work that creates authentic and lasting change. This evolution from cleverness to wisdom often requires experiencing the futility of trying to fix the world before your own house is in order. You discover that lasting change must begin with consciousness rather than circumstances. The peace you create within yourself becomes a gift to everyone you encounter because your presence carries the energy of integration rather than conflict. Your life becomes a demonstration of what becomes possible when someone takes full responsibility for their own consciousness rather than demanding that others change first. Part 100. Infinite Beginning Return. Let the beauty we love be what we do. There are hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground. This final teaching brings the entire journey full circle by revealing that authentic spiritual practice is simply allowing the beauty you recognize and love to express itself through your daily choices and actions. The beauty we love includes all the qualities and values that inspire your deepest appreciation, wonder, and reverence. When your activities align with this beauty, work becomes worship, and ordinary life becomes sacred expression. You stop separating spiritual practice from practical living because everything becomes an opportunity to honor what you love most deeply. Hundreds of ways to kneel and kiss the ground suggests that devotion and reverence can be expressed through infinite forms rather than only through traditional religious practices. Your unique way of honoring the sacred might be through art, science, parenting, business, gardening, or any activity that connects you with beauty and serves something larger than personal gain. The form matters less than the consciousness you bring to whatever you do. Every moment offers opportunities to kneel and kiss the ground through choices that honor life rather than diminish it. This teaching completes the circle by revealing that the end of seeking is the beginning of serving. When you realize that you already are what you have been seeking, life becomes an opportunity to express that recognition through love in action. The beauty you love calls you to become beautiful through allowing it to live through your words, deeds, and presence. Your entire existence becomes a prayer of gratitude for the gift of consciousness and an offering of that gift in service to the awakening of all beings. The journey that began with seeking fulfillment ends with becoming fulfillment itself, expressed through human form.